NBA playoffs. Who gets the NBA Finals home court advantage? The team with the best record. Who gets the home ice advantage in the Stanley Cup playoffs? The team with the best record.
Sure.
Only in baseball is it predetermined because, gosh, we can't have a city throw together a World Series at a moment's notice, even though that's what happens.
Sure. Yeah, and you don't think there's weeks and months of planning for those kind of things happening beforehand, whether they should happen or not with those host cities. Look, I could be here all day talking about some of the dumb things that Major League Baseball is doing. I went on a little rant in the past hour about the fact that they're making them wear the league-specific uniforms in the All-Star game, which bugs the crap out of me because teams wearing their own individual uniforms was one of the charming things about the All-Star game that you can do in baseball that you can't really do in other sports, that now they've sullied that tradition as well.
Yeah, as it relates to college football, look, Rich Clark, it's very possible is talking out of his ass here a little bit, right?
Sure.
There is the showmanship of, I guess, being at the first of the 4 major conferences media days and explaining this. And obviously we all have questions because until we see the first 12-team playoff played, there is a little bit of a mystery here. I mean, if you have been a fan long enough, you certainly remember we had some of these same questions going into the beginning of the 14 playoff. We had some of these same questions. I remember before Tennessee played Florida State in the first ever BCS national championship game, before that season, there was real hand-wringing about, oh my goodness, what if UCLA is in this game? Do we really want to give them a home field national championship? Or I'm sorry, not UCLA. What if Arizona State is in this game? Do we really want to give them a home field national championship game? It's
when the Fiesta Bowl is played where God intended to be played, Sun Devil Stadium.
That's right. So look, we tend to overcomplicate these things, and I wonder if sometimes. Well, no, let me rephrase this. I often think, and I think you agree with me because I think we've talked about this. College football would benefit tremendously from having a commissioner, but sometimes
1,000%.
sometimes when it's this kind of thing, I don't know that having a commissioner would make this any better because this could just be a clunky bureaucrat speaking clunkily, trying to make his job sound a lot harder than it actually is.
Well, and like you said, I'm imagining he's going to make his appearance at all 4 media days to some degree. It's his first chance to answer that question. So he'll be at Big Ten Media Days, SEC, ACC, where if he gets asked that same question again, he'll probably have a more refined answer. Now he's gotten to meet with his PR team like, crap, maybe I didn't answer that one the right way that I wanted to. So they'll have a better answer next time he gets asked that question to maybe satisfy people a little bit more.
No, that's a really good point. Like, he is almost certainly going to be in Dallas for SEC Media Days, and there's a very good chance he will start by saying that he wants to clarify what came out of his comments at Big 12 Media Days, and maybe things will come out a little bit clearer. But when it comes to the future and taking care of college football, very few people have carved out the kind of niche for themselves that Josh Pate has. He, the host of the Late Kick podcast on CBSSports.com, and our guest, he will join us coming up next. That is Tyler Head. I am Dimitri Ravanos. This is the Halftime Show on 107.5 The Game and the Game Sports Network.
I have not.
Okay, if you want to fly into Greenville Airport, you go to Clemson, you have to take back roads through Pendleton or Liberty.
How far is it?
Or
How
I mean,
far
you
is
can
it
get on
from
85 and get off the exit.
See, I've never been up there. I just, in a relative sense, know that it's near-ish to Greenville.
Yeah. The whole upstate is a mystery to me because it doesn't look like it should be long enough to have 106 miles of I-85 in it.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. People keep telling me to go up to Greenville. I've been here for 2 years and I haven't made it up there yet. So
have you been to Birmingham before?
I've never been farther west than Talladega.
Really?
Yeah.
What a limited life you have led, Tyler Head.
Hey, I don't need to go any farther than Talladega, to be honest with you.
That's all of the world I want to see, damn it.
That is it. I'm good.
I mean, my point in asking if you have been to Birmingham is that Greenville is your standard that size southern city, right? Like, I think Birmingham is great because my best friend lives in Birmingham and I used to live in Birmingham. If he lived in Greenville, I'm sure I would be saying the same thing about Greenville.
Down, Dave.
A data entry specialist could really help him in a crunch.
You see Josh Pate's number?
Indeed can help him hire great.
All right, cool.
Indeed you do. You can schedule and conduct virtual interviews all from your employer dashboard. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Just how does a car repair shop last in business for over 50 years like Suddeth Automotive? By providing a full
Fastest route, it says it's an hour, but you get on that little rose going into Clemson, you're gonna be sitting there forever. So probably 3-4 hours.
And your South Carolina bias does not influence your answer at all, does it?
No, I've been there.
We may get your honest assessment of Clemson later on in the show, Dave.
At 807 Bluff Road, right there across the street from our friends at the State Fair. We have new upgraded facilities, a video conferencing room experience that will seat up to 35 people depending on configuration. We also have meeting space and venue space on.
I forgot to hit the live button until we were like 8 minutes in. So, see, my goal was to hit it right at 12 o'clock so you could see. So the clock will be lined up for when we hit the top of the hour thing. I completely screwed that up.
No worries, mate. I mean, with using this on a Mac laptop, I've got the atomic clock right here in front of me, which I think is what the studio is synced to as well. On
It is. Like I said, that starts playing at 54:50, and that's 30 seconds to the end.
Okay, cool.
Free fitting and test walk today. Your good life starts with Good Feet.
The Good Feet store.
Do you want to intro Josh and take the first question since you're a big fan?
Yeah, I can do that.
Let's start it out sort of still tied to the CFP comments, and then I'll let you meander wherever you want to.
That's what I was going to go with. Just kind of, I like to talk about unintended consequences a lot of, the unknown of the college football playoffs. So I think that's a good starting point.
The one thing I did want to hit with him at the end is, I don't know if you saw yesterday on Twitter, he sort of laid out the different experiences of playing the video game with different teams.
Yep.
So I'll just sort of hit that with him at the end. But other than that, we can be pretty wide ranging, I think.
See what he can tell me about playing with Kennesaw State. That's my dynasty of choice.
I'm trying to decide as a strong lover of both FIU and Hawaii. Am I tied to one of those, or can I get wacky with where I start?
You can do whatever you want. You know, the fun thing to do is go be a coordinator at a G5 and see if you can work your way up to coach at Power 5.
Well, I mean, that's was the problem with the old game, right? You could be the coordinator for an FIU, and then you are getting a job offer to become the head coach of Ohio State within 2 years, and that's you need a little more realism than that.
Realistic.
Do you ever listen to the podcast Split Zone Duo?
I do. Yes.
Nate, did you hear the episode with the guy that is the lead producer on the game?
I did not.
It came out this week, and it's really interesting, him talking about the way you design a video game. Like, if somebody like really, really loves Toledo, you don't want to make it impossible to win a national championship with Toledo, but you also have to make it realistic to college football.
It's tough balance. All right, here we go. Welcome back in. It's the halftime show. Tyler Head, Dimitri Vanos joining me here on this Friday, talking all things college football playoff. Now joining us on the Love Chevrolet phone lines from the Late Kick podcast with CBS Sports, Josh Pate. First of all, Josh, appreciate you taking a little bit of your time for us this afternoon. You know, we were talking about this era of the unknown that we're entering, and I like to discuss the unintended consequences when things change in college football. And we're getting set to add 8 more teams as well as 2 more rounds to the college football playoff. You can think of any unintended consequences that might be coming down the road. Are there any that might stick out to you right away?
Well, the first thing that my mind went to, whenever we talked about this overlapping with erasing divisions and conferences, was how those would work and how they may not coincide. So I'm all for getting rid of divisions. I'm all for the two best teams in a conference playing for a conference championship game. But when we have the current structure of scheduling we have, you take Ohio State, Michigan, it's not very difficult to envision both of them being the two best teams in their conference. They play at the end of the season. They would then turn around and play again 6 days later. They may very well both be in the playoff and have an outside shot of facing off for a third time. And there are some people out there who say that's not a big deal. More football's great. More of a good thing's a good thing, blah, blah, blah. I've never been a believer in that. I have been a believer that you cannot decrease scarcity while maintaining the value of anything. It's basic economics. But the third thing is I'm a big regular season guy. I love rivalries, first and foremost in college football. And I mean first and foremost, more than the playoff even. And that game means everything. That Ohio State, Michigan game means everything. Texas versus Texas A&M is going to be a big deal. Alabama, Auburn, all these big end-of-the-year rivalry games. If we enter into a situation where we know no matter the outcome of this, they're going to face off again 6 days later, think of what that does. Think of the collateral damage on the rivalry itself. The rivalry, to me, is like institutional. It always has been. College football was created, and we had rivalries from the outset. Conference championship games are man-made, and they're very recent. The playoff is man-made. It's very recent. So you'll never get me to place more value on those things than the institutional thing that I've always known. And so that's one of the many unintended consequences we could see.
I think what is interesting, Josh, is like living in a college basketball heavy area in Raleigh, North Carolina, as I do. Like, to your point, I think that North Carolina fans will always have a little bit of a, yeah, but what are you going to say about this on Duke fans? Because they beat Duke in a Final Four and retired Coach K. That is one of those unintended consequences of a playoff format that you could be running into. But as it relates to the playoff format, what did you make of Rich Clark's comments yesterday at Big 12 Media Day that made it sound like it may not just be a matter of who has the best record of what campus is hosting those first round games?
Well, look, I go back even further. We're already including an auto bid process in this thing. So we're already not just taking the best 12 teams in order. So it was already convoluted to begin with. Then you have Rich Clark step up. And look, honestly, I didn't really feel the outrage a lot of other people felt. And it may just be that I heard him differently. It sounded to me like Barry Trammell, the reporter there, asked him, what does a campus need to do to be ready to host a playoff game? And I listened to Rich's full answer and the context and whatnot. And he said, well, weather plays a factor, being able to sell tickets, being able to house practices for both teams. Do you have enough hotel availability? To me, I never heard him say, you better have this or we're not giving you a game. It was just kind of speaking as a matter of fact, this is what you need. Now, it could be I'm wrong on that. And it could be there's a full-blown conspiracy in the works here. But, having the opinion that I've always had on the playoff anyway, I'm willing to play devil's advocate. Let's just say everyone is right and I'm wrong, and that's absolutely what they're getting ready to do. They're getting ready to screw some program out of a home playoff game. Well, my response to that would be, when did you ever think you were going to expand the playoff and it be the way you want? If you think you were getting screwed in the 4-team model, the same folks who were screwing you by building it that way have built the 12-team model. They're not building it for inclusion-based purposes. They're building it to have more seats at the table for a couple of conferences. And if you get in the way of it, you may very well find yourself laying on your back, looking up at the ceiling saying, oh, I thought I wanted to live here, but maybe I don't. Maybe this isn't for me.
Okay, so here's the thing that I sort of came out of that comment thinking, because I think I am somewhere between the panic and where you are. I wonder how much we are jumping on Rich Clark's back here with those comments, because we are so used to there not being a leader in this sport. And it's a little bit hard to articulate what it is you do as the executive director of the playoff, that to say, well, best record is obviously going to host the game, makes your job sound kind of unimportant. To me, I kind of wondered how much of this was Rich Clark having to elaborate on a microphone for the first time.
I think that anyone who has sat in an HR meeting or a meeting with a legal department understands exactly what we're talking about here. Those folks are very de-incentivized to give simple one-word answers or to say everything's okay. Because the moment everything's okay, their job's not really needed anymore.
Right.
It's the same way in a college football playoff bureaucracy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, I fully believe that. Both of those things could be true, by the way. He could have just been given a straightforward answer about logistics and could also, maybe be part of a problem. I've never met Rich. I don't know Rich. And for all I know, he was just speaking innocently. But, I mean, when is the last time we watched college football and the most logical answer ended up being the answer? That never happens. So you can feel safe to blindly assume this will be mishandled some way.
I was going to say, Dimitri and I were talking a bit earlier. I think they're workshopping an answer with the HR team for, I'm assuming, when he shows up in Dallas next week, the SEC Media Days or ACC Media Days or Big Ten Media Days, when he's probably going to be posed with a similar question again. Probably have a more streamlined, maybe better thought out answer that people may accept a little bit more across the board than what he said yesterday.
Yeah, here's what I'm going to do. If I get in one of those sessions, you don't give the vague questions. You got to go specific hypotheticals, like Rich. Penn State, Liberty, who's hosting the home playoff game if their resumes are the same? Boom. What does he say? That's what we want. That's the gotcha moment.
All right, that is Josh Pate. The Late Kick podcast is on CBSSports.com. Josh, before I let you go, I watched you yesterday on Twitter detail what it is like to play EA Sports College Football 25 in a number of different scenarios with a number of different teams. What is it that you think people should be doing with this game when they get it out of the box, downloaded, however they get it for the first time, be it on Tuesday if you got the deluxe package or Friday if you're part of the general public?
Work on kicking, because that's not nearly as easy. Find yourself a playbook that heavily incorporates pop passes on jet sweeps, because as far as we could tell in the office with the advanced copy of the game we got, that's really tough to defend, just as it is in real life. Mm-hmm. Running the ball, I think, is noticeably more difficult than it was on the previous game. I think throwing picks is something you're just going to have to get used to because it's going to happen. You need to go ahead and put yourself in the toughest road environments in the game to get a sense of what it's like to play on the road, because it's tough now. It's very, very true to life, I'll say. But I think the biggest fears will be alleviated a few minutes into playing the game. A lot of folks wanted to know, is it just going to be Madden, but with college football teams? It's not that. They did a really, really good job. They're putting out the kind of product you would think they'd put out with this many years to workshop it.
Yeah. Give me the college football moment or entity that showed up in the game that might have made your heart skip a beat.
So there wasn't one. I actually was talking about that last night with our staff, though. It was the collective of the minute details, I guess, of just capturing the game day and the in-stadium experience. To me, given we've been able to play it for a few hours, but that's what stood out to me the most. Like, it wasn't one given thing. It was just the collective, minute, just seemingly little, nothing attention to detail stuff. And you look at it and you say, wow, like that's, if I see that on my TV screen, it's just because a camera happened to pan over there. If I see that on a video game, it's because someone was sharp enough to notice it and say, we need to put this in this game.
Last one for you here. Got about 60 seconds. I'm going with Kennesaw State for my dynasty. I think Dimitri's going to go with Hawaii. You picking a team, or are we going Pate State team builder here?
Well, Pate State is the obvious answer, and it should be, and it will be. However, outside of that, if I go with an existing team, I'm always one to dunk on Rice. I'm always one to say, don't lose to food. That's one of the big rules in life. Don't lose to food. And so I think it would be apropos for me to just gird up my loins and adopt Rice and see how good I can cook with Rice.
Rebuild the old SWC and just go to town on Texas and A&M every single week. Josh Pate, the Late Kick podcast on CBS Sports. Josh, thanks so much, buddy.
Appreciate it, man.
All right. I think one of the things that really caught my eye, college football news this morning when I woke up, Tyler, was the major change in the way Vegas is thinking about the Heisman. We will get into that and what it says about the state of college football because this isn't just a 1-year trend we're looking at. That's next. That's Tyler Head. I'm Dimitri Ravanis. You are listening to 107.5 The Game and the Game Sports Network.
107.5 The Game in Columbia, 100.5 The Game in Florence, 100.3 The Game in Myrtle Beach. Game Network. Ever since meeting, what would you say you do here? I have people skills. I am good at dealing with people. Can't you understand that? Think to yourself, man, I'd rather be listening to the game. You're listening to Bill Gunner, Preston Thorne, Jim Jensen. It's the early days.
I texted Josh, thank you, and he said, I should have said this on air, but I think playing with Hawaii is like an ultimate expert level thing, given the way recruiting works. So that's interesting.
That is a good point. I cannot contain my excitement. I cannot wait.
Me neither.
It's gonna be
I highly recommend you listen to that episode of Split Zone Duo because they really do a great job of explaining how many times they had to basically stop and start a build all over just because of how much of college football has changed. Not just from the last game to now, but from the time they got the green light to start making the game to now.
Well, I saw this morning the tweet where they officially said they were coming back was February of 2021. It's been 3.5 years. I'm like, from what I've seen, that's about 3.5 years worth of work, if at minimum, from what we've seen from the game, which, and, you know, after that, 26, 27, they're going to be very similar with a few tweaks here and there, which is to be expected. But yeah, if you're going to have an 11-year layoff, you better come out firing on all cylinders when you get back.
Yeah, one of the things the producer said was clear right away is that there are ideas that they had that they needed to see how much the new version of college football in real life can support those sort of things, or are there other things that they haven't even thought of that are going to become a very real part of managing a program that they have to prioritize putting in the game. So they apparently already have improvements in mind.
My favorite thing about the old games was seeing how I could finagle the BCS. I 1 year, this was as a Georgia Dynasty, I had lost to Florida, went 11-1. They obviously represented the East, and it was Florida and Alabama in the SEC championship game as 1 and 2, and I was at 3. So I knew I was going to the national championship regardless of what happened, because one of them was going to have to lose. So despite not playing for the title, despite losing, despite playing for the SEC, despite not beating Florida, I still jumped them in the BCS to go to the national championship game against Alabama. I was like, what a beautiful broken system we used to have.
For sure, man. With the old video game, I've always wanted someone to ask somebody in charge, like, who at the very, very top of that game went to Georgia Tech? Because inexplicably, they never finished outside of the top 5.
Well, and that's the funny thing about the old games. The deeper you go into dynasty mode, I'm on my year 6 or 7 of this current one that I'm about to finish up this weekend, play the national championship for. You get to the point where, like, I played Fresno State for the national championship last season, and they were like, everybody in their team was like 90s overall. Like, it just gets weird the deeper into it you go.
Yeah, the Sun Belt always used to show up strong in my dynasties, and it was almost always either Lafayette or Arkansas State.
Right. Navy was like 11-1 in the past season. I was like, can I play a triple option team for the national championship?
Or what was even more fun is as the dynasty would go on and coaches would change teams, like suddenly Oregon is running the triple.
Right. I looked up. And I run traditional spread. But I saw that Brian Ferentz was my new offensive coordinator. And I was like, for tradition's sake, I should just go I formation and run the ball 3 out of every 4 plays.
Right. Just up the gut every single play. Doesn't matter. 3rd and 9, up the gut. In fact, we're giving it to the fullback.
Football in a phone booth.
I can't remember who it is. It was some college football writer used to refer to handing the ball to the fullback out of the eye as good Christian football, which always made me laugh.
That is funny.
running was good. His size is unbelievable. Just search Believe. That's BLEAV podcast wherever you listen. What you're talking about.
Welcome back in. It's the halftime show. Tyler Head and Dimitri Ravanos hanging out with you on this Friday, talking about the upcoming college football season. And, of course, before we get into the college football playoff, we will crown a Heisman Trophy winner for 2024, which is de facto become a quarterback award at this point in time. Yeah, you have your Devontae Smiths that jump up and win it every now and then if they just have an ungodly season like he had that year. But mainly it's going to go to quarterbacks and should be no different this year as well. But the Heisman odds are interesting with the mix of different types of quarterbacks that find their way at the top of the list.
Yeah, it's interesting because now remember, a casino, a Vegas sports book is trying to move your money. They are not telling you they think for sure this is what is going to happen. They're trying to cause an emotional reaction in you when it comes to futures bets like this. Carson Beck, the Georgia quarterback, had been the favorite for an extended period of time. And yesterday, ESPN Bet releases a new Heisman board that has Oregon's Dylan Gabriel moving to the top as the Heisman favorite. Still sort of a long shot at plus 750 odds, but Dylan Gabriel replacing Carson Beck as your Heisman favorite. How does that strike you? Not even as a Georgia fan, just as a college football fan. How does that strike you, Tyler?
I guess it doesn't surprise me because of what we kind of know Oregon to be, a place where, like with Bo Nix, you can go out there and put up a lot of stats, and obviously you're going to be in the national conversation each and every week and each and every year to where you're relevant when it comes to, people that are voting on the Heisman. Hey, I get to watch that guy every week, or hey, I see his highlights every week. And we obviously saw what Dylan Gabriel was able to do at Oklahoma, and we expect him to be doing much of the same, if not better, out there at Oregon. So that doesn't overly shock me, I guess. But he's obviously been around the game for a while, so certainly has experience on his side, which helps as well.
Is this going to be his fourth school that he's played at?
UCF, Oklahoma, Oregon.
Was there not? Am I misremembering a stop at Florida State in there?
Hold on, let me check on that. You may be right.
Or is there there was a period of time when Tua Tagovailoa sort of came in, won that national championship. All of a sudden, I don't know if it's just because we noticed more, there really was that class. All of a sudden, everyone had a Hawaiian quarterback. So it's very possible I'm confusing him with someone else.
Yeah, just UCF, Oklahoma, and Oregon. Are you saying all Hawaiian quarterbacks are the same?
I am saying that if they are not Tua Tagovailoa, I could not even tell you what they look like. All right, so Dylan Gabriel.
Yes.
23 years old, his third team, and I believe this will be his 19, 20, 1, 2, 3, 4, his sixth season in college football.
That is correct, yes.
I want everybody listening, especially Gamecocks fans, to take a moment to appreciate how rare what Shane Beamer is doing at the quarterback position is now in college football, because ever since the COVID year, the super senior eligibility came into play, and combine that with the ease of movement that the transfer portal has created, saying it is this young player, whether it's a true freshman or a guy that has been buried on the depth chart that's a sophomore or redshirt freshman or whatever, saying that we are ready to turn things over to this guy has now become pretty rare in college football.
Yeah, and it almost kind of seemed like the trend flipped for a while, because it used to be you had to come in, you had to earn your stripes, you sat behind the junior or senior for a couple of years, and by the time you were a junior, you got your chance, and that's what it was. And then, I don't know, I guess late 2000s, 2010s is when it kind of shifted back in the other direction, where programs weren't like Matt Barkley was the starter at Southern Cal before he even stepped on campus. You know what I mean? Like, he already had the reins before he ever put on a Trojan uniform. So, but now it seems with the availability of having guys like Cam Rising has the opportunity to play an 8th season next year if he wants to, by the way.
He said in media days that he's not going to, but let's have that conversation again in December.
Morbid curiosity, I want to see it happen personally. Just to say a guy's been around for literally 10 years.
There's a linebacker at, is it Miami that's going into his 9th season this year?
That is Cam McCormick, tight end at Miami, by the way. Yes, he's going into his 9th year. I really hope he's Dr. Cam McCormick at this point in time, because if you've spent, like, if his major is still interdisciplinary studies,
Yeah.
they should just kick him off the team. Because like, what are you doing with your life that you spent 9 years in football between Oregon and Miami, two pretty premier institutions,
Yeah.
and you learn nothing?
I mean, look, you look at these older players, and Tyler is right. Like, they can come at any position, but at quarterback, I think we can point to what happened last year and say it really does change your fortunes. If I told you, Tyler, that the top 3 finishers in the Heisman Trophy were transfer quarterbacks in their second year at their new school, does that surprise you?
No, not at all. I mean, that's
Jaden
kind of
Daniels, Michael Penix Jr., and Bo Nix. And I think Penix is the ultimate example of what an older quarterback can do, because Washington had tried that receiver group with homegrown quarterbacks before.
Sure.
And if Oregon thinks they have that offense this year, they brought in Evan Stewart from A&M, which is going to be a huge game changer for that team's passing game. Maybe Dylan Gabriel is the play.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I have nothing against older quarterbacks. I don't think Dylan Gabriel's an NFL talent. So, brother, play as long as you possibly can. Enjoy your life.
Yeah.
But there is I don't know, it's an easy way to sort of make sure we don't see anything new at the top of college football.
Yeah, and once we filter out all the COVID year guys, which I guess within the next 2 years that all be gone, maybe that reverts back to the norm a little bit. But with the accessibility of the transfer portal, where in some programs, I mean, look at Lincoln Riley, who for the first time in forever is finally taking on a quarterback that's been in his system for a couple years
Right.
instead of just going out and grabbing a transfer quarterback. Like some coaches say, you know what, this is just the way I'm going to do it. I'm going to bring in a guy from the portal. He's going to start for a year or two. And then when he's gone, I'm going to go find somebody else. And you can get away with that to a degree. But if you end up in a situation where, like, again, Lincoln Riley didn't get somebody this time out of the portal that is going to be able to come in and start right away, though, from what we think, he's like, okay, I got Miller Moss. What can I do with him now?
Well, I mean, look, I think that we both agree that Miller Moss is the favorite, but don't forget, Lincoln Riley did go get someone out of the portal, the kid from UNLV. I can't
That's
remember his
right. I forgot.
Maivia, Jordan Maivia.
That's right. I forgot about him.
Who, look, is really talented, and it is a problem that G5 schools have been facing for as long as kids are allowed to transfer. If you're too good,
Sure.
you're probably not going to stay at the school that you started at. But to your point, like, for all of the talk about Lincoln Riley as a quarterback whisperer, he certainly has a history of getting dudes to the league, but he doesn't really have a history of being the reason that those guys are the talent level that they are.
That's an interesting point that you bring up, because for the longest time it was, guys from FCS, guys from Group 5 that balled out at whatever school they were at, that then took that step up to the next level, which to a degree makes sense because it's kind of like a ladder system. But now we're in this area where, like, if we're at South Carolina and somebody has a phenomenal season, we're like, oh crap, I hope somebody from Oregon or Texas doesn't take them away from us. You know what I mean? Like, it shifted so much to where nobody's truly safe anymore.
If it happened from power program to power program, it was something like a Cam Newton situation where a dude had been booted off of one team. I mean, in other positions, you could think of Randy Moss's journey down to Marshall. But the first guy I could remember being told, hey, your job is not safe here, and moving on to find a better situation for himself, I mean, it might be Russell Wilson. That's the first one I kind of have a concrete memory of. Does not mean he's the first one, period.
Yeah, and that was definitely a big deal when it happened at the time, and obviously ended up having a lot of success at Wisconsin. That he was able to ride success in the NFL as well. But yeah, that was definitely outside the norm in the late 2000s to see something like that happen.
It's going to be interesting to see how a, let's call them, veteran quarterback affects what Oregon can do in the Big Ten, because while Oregon has Dylan Gabriel, remember, Ohio State, the team that everybody says is probably Oregon's toughest competition to win that conference, maybe the best roster in America this year. Well, they bring in a super senior in Will Howard out of Kansas State. So it's really interesting when you think about that top tier of dudes, of teams rather. Only Alabama and Georgia have a quarterback that started with their school.
Yeah,
right? I mean, Will Howard started at Kansas State.
Sure.
Dylan Gabriel started at UCF. Quinn Ewers started at Ohio State. It's a very interesting year, especially coming off of a year where we saw age play a big role in Washington's ascent and Florida State's ascent too. Let's not forget
well,
Jordan Travis was not young
we
by
know
college football standards.
we know college football is very much like the NFL, a copycat league. When you see success for one program or one set of programs doing it, everybody else soon follows suit.
No, that's true. And look, those two programs, by the way, Alabama and Georgia, they might have homegrown quarterbacks, but that doesn't mean they didn't try to go the other route, right? Like,
I mean,
Jalen Milroe is, Jalen Milroe is awesome because Jalen Milroe is awesome. But remember, at one point, Alabama was thinking Tyler Buckner could be the starter of this team. You're right.
Star lacrosse player for Notre Dame.
That's right. That is the weirdest thing with that. Have you remember when Greg Paulus left Duke to become a quarterback at Syracuse?
I do not.
Oh, yeah. Greg Paulus, Duke point guard, one of the most punchable white Duke basketball players you could imagine. Was not going to the NBA, so he transferred to Syracuse as a quarterback for one more year of playing sports. Wow. Speaking of sports, one of the most meaningless nights in sports every single year is the ESPY Awards. But last night, Dawn Staley was honored, and her speech is worth listening to because it was more about her team here in Columbia than her. We will get into that coming up next. Tyler Head, I'm Dimitri Ravanis. You are listening to 107.5 The Game and The Game Network.
I'll hit the text as soon as we come back in.
Yep. Sounds good.
Did you watch it? I didn't watch it either. I don't know. Oh, apparently he said they didn't show all the awards being presented last night. So like,
I saw this on Twitter. They started it late because of Joe Biden's press conference thing last night, and as a result, on the East Coast, I don't think ABC made their affiliates stay with it. They could go to local news. It was a market by market decision.
Wow. Oh. I missed both of those things last night.
Yeah. So did I. I was watching all of The Bear last night.
I was watching. We're almost done with Arrested Development.
Oh, sure.
We're on the 4th season now.
This was the 4th season is the first one that was exclusively a Netflix season, right?
Yeah. After they came back after like 10 years, they try and pretend like everybody doesn't look older.
That when that show was on, that was one of my favorite shows.
Well, it's one. I mean, people have been telling me for years to watch it, and I just never got around to it. But we obviously did The Office. We watched Friends. We watched Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and I was just like, because we like funny type of things.
Yeah.
And I was like, I've heard good things about this show. Let's give it a shot.
Have you watched The Good Place?
I have not. Is that the next?
I think it's entirely on Netflix. It is the smartest, dumbest show you will ever watch in your life.
Sounds right up my alley.
Yeah. Is it storming down there?
It is bright and sunny right now. I know we got some rain coming in later.
Is the thunder coming through my microphone at all?
I cannot hear it.
Okay, cool.
Hopefully you don't lose power.
No, I don't think I'm going to lose power. And even if I do, I'm on a laptop, so I'll be okay. But I just like it's first time it dawned on me how loud this is.
Yeah, I can't hear it.
Remember, don't scream. Call a key. Dial 800 all sevens now. Herb Glass is responsible for this ad. Cases are handled at 32 Ames Street.
If
9403. Paid endorsement, not actually.
Dylan Gabriel balls out this year and is all Big Ten, he will have made all conference in every single conference he's been in.
$1 million.
I love that so much.
He is also the oldest person to have ever won Big 12 Newcomer of the Year.
Wow. That's phenomenal. Well, could Rising win that? This is his first year in the Big 12?
Oh, that's a very good question.
Like, does it only apply to guys playing their first year?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I guess.
I'd like to see that.
I guess you would have to, right? Like you're getting a whole new
because
Slate of opponents.
he's been around since 16 as a redshirt freshman at Texas.
Yeah, Jesus Christ.
He's on meds too.
And,
I always forget he started at Texas until someone makes
Yeah.
mention of how long he has been in college football.
Well, if his knee gives out in game number 3 and can get another year out of it, let's go for number 8.
He has one of the best, like, is this a quarterback or Christian rock band names ever.
That is very true. Also, I feel like his helmet gets bigger every single season,
Yes.
which is hilarious to me. He wears the Visus, one of the new ones, that is just
Yeah.
insanely large, like the one that Welker used to wear.
Oh, right. Oh, so is he going to be one of the ones that wears the added shell this year, I wonder?
I don't know. I haven't seen anything about that,
God,
which
I hope
that
so.
looks comically stupid.
Agreed. I mean, I'm all for whatever makes things safer so that we can keep playing this sport, but that is goofy.
Welcome back in. Halftime show. Tyler and Dimitri with you on this Friday. It is time for our Firehouse Sub text of the hour. Going back to our Clemson conversation earlier, Nameless Texter says, I took my girlfriend to see Clemson's football stadium and campus and was very surprised at the looks of the place. It looked very old and not very nice like our facility. There might be some Gamecock bias built into that answer a little bit, but we'll take it.
I think I said this yesterday when we were talking about the way that Charlotte looked hosting that soccer game on Wednesday night, and did they miss the opportunity to build a new stadium and what could have come there? I think college fans of every single team need to get out of their feelings and just admit that every college stadium is a dump. Like they're terrible places to watch games.
I don't think you're totally wrong. I guess it depends on your individual experience and where you're watching the game from.
That's a very good point. Like, I will defend Legion Field in Birmingham, a legendary dump to the hills, because it's where I went to my first college football game.
Oh, totally. And the spirit of Bear Bryant's kept that place alive for however old it is at this point in time, even though they probably could have done a few more renovations there. But yeah,
Remember the year that Carolina played, I think it was USF in the bowl game that was there.
Was that the PapaJohns.com bowl?
Oh, that's the one. That's the one. Not Papa John's proper, where you go with the website. One of the receivers for USF in that game told me that he, by the second quarter, was running out of bounds on purpose because he has never felt grass that hurt that much.
Yeah, everybody talks about how that was probably the coldest game they experienced in their life. I think they ran out of pizza and hot chocolate like in the first half or something like that. It was not from what I gather, it was not a fun experience.
Yeah, well, speaking of not a fun experience, the ESPYs usually is that for most sports fans. But if you are a fan of Carolina last night, you might have tuned in to see what Dawn Staley had to say. She was honored with the Jimmy V Award for perseverance, and she talked about the way cancer has touched her life with losing a close friend and assistant coach recently. She also highlighted some of the stories of both children and other women that have gone through cancer treatments. But more than anything, she talked about the way that she presents herself in public has way more to do with the 12 women that put on the Carolina basketball jersey for her each and every year than anything else. Take a listen to this.
How do I not fight injustice when I ask them to do the things the right way? How do I not fight for fairness when I ask them not to cheat themselves, not to cut corners? How do I not fight for equity when I tell them they can climb as high as they want? They can be all that they want. How do I not fight pay disparity when I do the same job and get paid less but win more? They're watching me. I can't ask them to stand up for themselves if I'm sitting down, nor can I ask them to use their voice to affect change if I'm only willing to whisper. So when someone tells me to shut up and coach, I simply say, no. I have a job to do. I'm being watched. And yes, using my platform is an awesome responsibility, but it's a responsibility that was divinely bestowed on me, and I graciously accept it.
Every time she speaks, it is easy to see why it is that she has sort of become the gold standard of who elite women's basketball players want to play for, right? She talks about her team in a way that conveys that she owes this effort to them in a way that coaches of any sport used to not talk on the college level.
Yeah, no, absolutely. She's an incredible leader, and obviously the success speaks for itself for what she's able to do out there. Very cool to see her get honored with that award last night, and she is truly a brand in and of herself, and has crossed over to the mainstream that even people that aren't paying attention to women's basketball know who she is, knows what South Carolina is, and again, any opportunity that she can get out there to speak not only about herself but the program as well, does a phenomenal job with that, and she did great last night as well.
She mentioned last night Jim Valvano, the former head coach of NC State, who both the award and the Jimmy V Foundation are named for. And then she also name checked Stuart Scott and Robin Roberts, of people that, like, it is amazing to think that someone considers her on their level of leadership and bravery, and she very humbly accepted. It was a great moment last night in what was, for the most part, a forgettable evening in sports every year.
As it typically is, and even more forgettable given the fact that it's actually still during the time where there's sports on, like Major League Baseball, and instead of the day after the All-Star game. So congratulations, Dawn Staley. Congratulations to the South Carolina women, as well as Asia Wilson for the award that she won at the ESPYs last night as well. South Carolina very well represented there. Oh, I love talking realignment. We're going to talk about it coming up in the next hour. Football. The next hour on the halftime show. He's Dimitri. I'm Tyler on the game.
Right at the top. Right?
Yes. Was that the computer that was making that bloop sound, Dave?
Chevrolet Studios.
Did you not hear that, like, ding, bloop, or whatever sound it was making? No. Okay.
One volume Chevy dealer. Don't let the summer of savings pass you by. I-26 at Harbison and at lovechevy.com. Together, let's drive. Captain Cartier in downtown Columbia and Gamecock football go hand in hand for the ultimate fan experience. Located in the heart of the city, their prime location offers easy access to all the action on game day. With home dates available for exciting matchups against Old Dominion, LSU, Ole Miss, Wofford, Missouri, and Texas A&M, there's no better place to stay for Gamecock football season. Book your room now by calling 803-227-3400 and let them take care of the rest. Enjoy comfort, convenience, and hospitality at Hilton Garden Inn, Columbia downtown.
Hi, this is Elijah Campbell, and I'm here with Toby, a client of Columbia Secret for Weight Loss, like myself. Toby, why did you join the Columbia Secret for Weight Loss program?
You start having grandchildren and you want to be around for things. It got to a point where it was getting tough keeping up with them. I just wanted to try to do some things to get my weight down and get my energy back.
What was your goal with your weight loss?
To lose about 80 pounds. After 60 days, I got to 56 pounds. So feeling really good about where things are. Continuing to keep it off, continuing to lose more.
What helped you be successful at losing weight at Columbia Secret?
Oh, I
for
thought
Weight
that was
Loss?
Grandchildren.
Oh, no. That's Elijah.
Your mind to it. It can be done. Anybody can do it.
Oh, no. I mean, this person talking right now about.
Yeah.
I thought that was Dave talking to you.
No. That's our Columbia Secret for Weight Loss commercial.
Sure.
Call Columbia Secret for Weight Loss now at 803-810 or online.
What was that?
Columbia Secret for Weight Loss.
Dimitri's Dave's asking, what are you implying about him? Does he need to lose weight?
No, I'm not. Listen, David, you've seen me. I have no room to talk about anybody. I was just saying that those sweet dulcet tones sounded like they could only be coming out of you.
I wonder why they chose him instead of me, because I'm like, it's something I could use. And Elijah has, does he have any weight problems? Really?
He's got a beer gut.
A lot of things you can track. Pet steps.
True.
Screen time,
I'm still working on mine.
Celebrity.
My dad said when I hit 30, my metabolism will finally slow down and I'll actually gain weight.
None of these things could save you money.
2 more years.
Yeah, live it up in those 2 years.
Oh, trust me, I am.
It's much better. Spaniel
I somehow came back from those 2 weeks in South America where everybody gives you what is basically a moon pie, but instead of marshmallow, caramel in the middle at the end of every meal. Somehow came back having lost weight.
That actually sounds pretty fire. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh, it's amazing.
I'm a sucker for caramel.
Yeah. There was a place it was in most of Buenos Aires, like caramel dulce de leche is like their specialty. And there are all these stores that out front just have a jar open with little plastic sticks. You could just walk by, stick your stick in, take a little caramel for the road.
I know where my next vacation is going to be.
Go now while the dollar is worth 1,000 Argentinian pesos.
Oh, be like a king down there.
That's right.
Did you ever see that episode of Family Guy where I think he went to the African village and he had like $5 and they made him a king?
I'm sure I did, but I haven't seen it in forever.
It was one of the earlier seasons.
Yeah.
And he pays Joe Pesci and Nickel to talk like Vinny, or like
I do remember.
Vinny the
I do
entire
remember
time.
that, yeah. Are you a SNL guy?
I haven't been into it as much in recent years.
Yeah, I was about to clarify, not currently, but like, do you have a favorite sketch, person, character?
Man, I was really into it about 10 or so years ago with like Sandberg and Taron Killam and Kenan Thompson and stuff. Favorite sketch? I have to come back to you on that one. That's a tough question.
I'm always interested because I think every age group considers their era the classic era. And if I were to tell you right now, Chris Farley, Matt Foley, I don't know how much it would mean to you.
Oh, it means a lot to me. I love watching the old stuff.
Yeah.
Hour number 2, it's the halftime show. Tyler and Dimitri along with you on this Friday. It's 1 o'clock. That means it is time for football, and more football. And as is always, a relevant topic of conversation, the realignment of college football that has been persisting really pretty consistently for over a decade now. And I brought this up this morning. I'm only 28, right? There are very few things that make me say, back in the day. But when I talk about college football, the geography of conferences used to mean something.
Sure.
Southeastern Conference teams played in the Southeast. The Big 12 Conference teams played in the Midwest. Big 10 in the Northeast to slightly Midwest. And then the Pac-12 was the West Coast, as well as the ACC on the East Coast. All that's gone out the window, and nothing matters anymore.
4 power conferences left in college football. Every single one of them made when I say major additions, I mean in numbers or in quality. In every single case, it was not both. But all 4 of the major conferences made big additions at the beginning of this month. I don't know if you saw this in The Athletic, but Stuart Mandel went through all 4 power conferences, looked at every team, and rated them on a scale of -5 to +5 of how their fortunes change, how their outlook, that's a better way to say it, how their outlook changes with the new reality of their conference. Did you look at this at all?
Yeah, I did, and I'm skimming back through it, right now, and it's a really interesting angle to look at realignment because, like you said, it's not all created equal. And while some programs like Texas can come in and benefit greatly from being a part of the SEC, there is going to be a negative effect of not only the teams within the conference, but other teams around college football that feel the ripple effect of them making that kind of movement.
For sure. I mean, look, only one team scored a 5, and that is SMU, who is the one and only non-power conference team that jumps into a power conference situation now as a member of the ACC, something they have been chasing for years and years and years. They always had the money. They have the desirable market. They just had to find someone desperate enough.
Well, and now they've proven that if you can pay for it yourself, you can go anywhere.
Exactly. There are a few teams that are way down at the bottom scoring a -5. Among them, California. It is not a surprise to me at all that you see the full range of this scale inside the ACC.
Yeah, and as we talked about, and yes, SMU did have a really good season last year in the AAC, and I think they're very capable of competing that middle-ish tier of the ACC right away. I don't think there's going to be too many growing pains with them. But yes, that bottom half of the ACC, as we talked about, is already not all that great. And then you add in two below-average teams in Stanford and Cal, and it's like, it's one of those things. They're going to be talked about so little, I feel like, from the ACC standpoint. You're going to forget that they're there.
Not just below average teams in Stanford and Cal, but also a non-power team. In SMU. Like we talked about this a lot yesterday because we were talking about it in relation to Clemson's lawsuit against the ACC. Like, I don't think the grass is greener for Clemson leaving the conference, but I absolutely understand why they want to leave that conference.
Yeah, absolutely. If you get yourself into a Big 12 or something like that, for one, you have the opportunity to make more money in the shorter term compared to being locked in with the SEC's grant of rights through 2036. But also, I think you invite yourself into a more wide open conference. I mean, the Big 12 is, I mean, there's legitimately 7 to 8 teams that could win that thing this year with how wide open it is. But the ACC, it's like, all right, Florida State, Clemson, Notre Dame kind of exist in there, but not really.
Yeah.
Maybe Louisville could surprise you again. Miami should be pretty good this year. But, you know, the difference between the haves and the have-nots in the ACC might as well be the Grand Canyon.
Yeah, for sure. So as we go through this, I know what it is that everybody wants to know. How does Stuart Mandel sort of view Carolina in the new landscape of the SEC? He rated Carolina a -3. And among the reasons was not even necessarily that Texas and Oklahoma makes the league a lot tougher. They do, but he says, quote, now they're losing the SEC East. It becomes even more difficult to maintain relevance. I do think that is something that is true, not just of Carolina. I think Missouri is going to go through this. I think Kentucky is going to go through this. In the Big Ten, I think a lot of those Western Division teams are going to go through this. When you don't have to deal with a specific group of underachievers in order to get a spot either in the conference title game or be positioned in a way that sends you to a better bowl game, expansion's not going to look so rosy.
It's not. And God, how many years, really until Georgia came to be what it's been in recent years, did the SEC East just produce a lackluster team to go get throttled by Alabama or LSU or whoever in the conference championship game? Like, that was just kind of the norm for a while.
Let's predate that even. Tyler, how many years was it basically whoever wins the Tennessee-Florida game in week 3? We can go ahead and fast forward to the end of this thing.
Yeah, that was a pretty standard thing through the 90s at the very least there. So, yeah, you know, doing it this way without divisions, taking the top 2 teams based on win percentage, definitely the best way to determine, you know, who's going to be playing for the conference championship game. But that is a good point, you know, with where South Carolina stands and, you know, Carolina, and we can throw in a variety of variables about where Carolina stands in the greater scheme of things of the SEC, but you could say they float somewhere around the very middle.
Yeah.
Given what they've accomplished in recent years, even when you add in the Spurrier years a decade ago and all that kind of stuff. So to automatically have 2 teams that come to your conference that jump ahead of you in that line, that knock you at best from maybe like an 8th to like a 10th or an 11th, that hurts.
Yeah, agreed. I would say they are bottom of the middle because this is advantageous geography for sure. However, like teams in less advantageous geography, like say Ole Miss, Missouri, are clearly ahead of them right now. Now those are teams where that can change on a dime. So right now they're in the bottom of the middle, but that doesn't mean that that is where they are just, you know, as you do a 30,000 foot up view of the league. One thing that I thought was interesting is Mandel puts Oklahoma on the same level as Carolina, and it's for a little bit of a different reason. It is that he starts out like this: from 1938 to 2021, the Sooners claimed the Big 8 or Big 12 championship in 47 out of 83 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
By the end of that run, you saw what the Big 12 was. And not even last year. I'm talking about from the moment that Nebraska exited that conference. It was a lot of Oklahoma and also Rams. They're never going to experience that again.
No, they're not. And, you know, I pulled this stat the other day that since 2000, only 7 years has either Texas or Oklahoma not won the Big 12 championship game. It was routinely those 2 teams either finishing 1-2 in the conference standings, playing each other in the conference championship game, or whatever it may be. And even an instance last year where Oklahoma was definitely a better team than Oklahoma State was. They just happened to trip up in Bedlam, and that's what cost them the opportunity to play for the conference championship game. So as long as they didn't really shoot themselves in the foot, they're going to be in a pretty good position. But yeah, now you come in here and where you went from being 1 or 2 in your last conference, you're optimistically somewhere around maybe 7th to 8ish yourself in this conference. And yes, Oklahoma is rebuilding a little bit. Brett Venables going into year number 3. Obviously, they're retooling a lot of positions on the team. Jackson Arnold taking over at quarterback after Dylan Gabriel left. So there is some growing pains they're going to have to experience. But even when they have that great roster of whatever year is going to be coming down the line, it's not going to be as easy as it once was.
No, not at all. Some of the other teams that are near the bottom of that +5 to -5 scales, this is across all of the power conferences. I mentioned Cal is at the very bottom at a -5. Stanford, USC, Washington, UCLA, Arizona, Utah, 2 teams that we think are going to be contenders for the Pac-12 championship, or excuse me, Big 12 championship rather, right away. But still, going into the Big 12, it's tough for anybody. I mean, it literally spreads across the entire country now.
You bring up Southern Cal, and I'll go back to what Joe Castiglio, the AD at Oklahoma, said last week in Oklahoma's introduction to the SEC, where he kind of had the parting shot at Lincoln Riley about, well, we have coaches that want to be here. And there was always that persisting rumor that Lincoln Riley didn't want anything to do with the SEC when, Texas and Oklahoma were going to be heading there a couple of years down the line. I imagine he wasn't privy to knowing that Southern Cal was going to be in the Big Ten or announced in the Big Ten only a couple months after he decided to take the job. And if he would have known that, he would have, if he would have stayed at Oklahoma, he'd be going to the SEC, but would he have been more hesitant to maybe want to make that jump knowing he's still going to end up in one of the top 2 conferences regardless?
Maybe. I mean, look, I've never understood the is it Lincoln Riley so weak for wanting no part of the SEC? No, man, this is his livelihood. Of course you're going to take the easier path or prefer the easier path of the 2.
You were in a Big 12 that, as we said, Oklahoma could run roughshot through. Texas was obviously down. All they had to do was not shoot themselves in the foot.
Baylor in the championship game multiple times. Like
exactly.
It's a joke.
Don't trip up on the easy game. You'll bring in a transfer quarterback that you can turn into Heisman Trophy winner, and then you go out there and fall on your face in the college football playoff semifinal. It was a nice little life that they were living.
Yep, for sure. Also, I do want to point out with Joe Castiglio's comments, it strikes me very similar to the way people reacted when Kevin Durant left Oklahoma City for Golden State. Dude, people from Oklahoma cannot fathom other people not wanting to be in Oklahoma. It's a weird tunnel vision thing people from that state have.
I've never been to Oklahoma myself. My dad grew up in a military family. He lived several years in Lawton, Oklahoma, where the military base was. My dad is 67 years old. To this day, he still talks about how boring and dull the state of Oklahoma was.
Yeah. My buddy Bomani Jones, his mom is from Oklahoma, and he went back for the first time recently for some ceremony to honor his mom. And he was like, man, my plan was to land right before the ceremony and leave the moment dinner was done after, because you do not want to be in Oklahoma any second. You do not have to be.
That is fantastic.
All right, one of the teams that really came in low, not at a -5, but at a -4, is a team at the very bottom of the SEC, and that is Vanderbilt. I do wonder if something that happened not on the field, not in the classroom, but in court yesterday was a huge sigh of relief in a way that makes Vanderbilt capable of staying in the SEC. It is that big of a deal. I will explain to you what it is when we come back. He is Tyler. I'm Dimitri, and this is 107.5 The Game.
The Beach, The Game Network. Powered by Integrated Media, The Game TV. Sponsored by Shepherd's Glass.
Next summer, we should get a house in Myrtle and make it do like a The Game Beach Week kind of thing.
I am 1,000% here for that.
I'd be like the old MTV Beach House, which obviously predates you, but that used to be a thing every summer. They would go to like some shitty New Jersey beach and just do the whole content lineup in there.
And then they decided, you know what? We should make a whole show about this.
That's right.
Let's take the least likable people off the Jersey Shore and just feature them on this show.
We had so that show debuted. I was still in rock radio, and we made a whole bit out of me what's the best way to say it? Like we had sort of set up this character that I did that I was like, you know, the Eminem song Stan?
Yes.
Okay. I was the main character of Stan, but for Snooki. And it was a lot of fun when we finally got her on the show.
That is phenomenal. What is she doing now, by the way?
I believe they have rebooted the Jersey Shore, if I remember right.
Oh, you know what? I haven't watched MTV in forever.
It's not from seeing it on MTV. It's my gym had the TV that is right next to CNN is on some other network owned by MTV, and I'm confident that I've seen those advertisements on that screen over and over again.
Okay, I know they a couple years ago had Floribama Shore.
Yes.
What are we doing?
Yeah. It's so fun. I have a friend from high school that is now she works for a podcast company that produces like the story podcast, like fiction podcast.
Right.
But she was working in Hollywood for a while, and the number of people that would talk to her about Perdido Key, which is that Floribama line, about what beautiful beaches it is. I would always be like, what beach did they go to? Like they surely cannot be talking about the same beach I went to as a child.
That's kind of funny that you mentioned Myrtle Beach. That's kind of the perception of Myrtle Beach.
Yeah.
Where like I feel like people outside of the state view it as a destination, but everybody here is like, that crappy place.
My kids refer to Gatlinburg as Myrtle Beach in the mountains, which I think is like perfect.
I've not been to Gatlinburg. From what I've heard, I think that's a fair assessment.
It is. I mean, down to the exact same stupid dinner shows are there.
So my wife's never been to Myrtle Beach. I've been there a couple times, and she's like, "Oh, maybe we should think about going." I'm like, "It's probably the least relaxing beach you could ever go to in your life." Traffic is everywhere.
North Myrtle is pretty great.
Yeah, North Myrtle is fine, but like Myrtle Beach, like there's nothing relaxing about it.
Yeah, that's what the only reason I like Myrtle Beach is because I think there is a real dividing line at the state border. We're like the North Carolina beaches don't feel like beaches to me. They feel like country clubs, and I don't like them. Like they're not the Alabama beaches that I grew up with. So I really enjoy somewhere that it's easier to count the bikinis that are not Confederate flags because you'll be done soon.
That's a fair assessment. I feel like what you see there. We used to, my family, we always went to Sunset Beach, which is right on the state line.
Yeah.
It's like right across from Myrtle Beach. Why they chose that one, I don't know, because it was like a 6-hour ride from where we lived in Georgia. But that was our go-to every year.
Oh, wait a minute. I thought your birthright as a Georgian was Destin.
Actually, I've never been to Destin.
Really?
I have not.
That by the time I got older, we more often went to Destin than we did to Gulf Shores in Alabama, just because at that point Destin was on the come up. It was not too crowded yet, but they were still behaving because everybody was looking at them.
Fair enough. Welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head and Dimitri Urvanos here on your Friday, talking all things realignment. Went through Stuart Mandell's list of who benefits and who suffers from the new realignment in college football in 2024. And, anytime we talk about Vanderbilt in any context when it comes to college football, they have long been the SEC's doormat, that guaranteed win that everybody puts on their schedule, though sometimes they can jump up there and surprise you like they did against Kentucky and Florida a couple seasons ago. But you bring up a really good point. They might have actually benefited from something that happened recently.
Johnson versus the NCAA is the case that is in court right now. It's the one that you have probably heard about as will college athletes become employees of their university? And yesterday, an appellate court judge gave a ruling that seemed like a big win towards athletes becoming employees. And the question that was asked specifically that the judge ruled on is, are college athletes entitled to the same sort of employment workman's comp sort of protections that an employee is? And the judge ruled that they are. But one thing that he did in this ruling, I think, helps a school like Vanderbilt tremendously. And that is that he said that this actually should be ruled on by the lower courts, and the lower courts should consider the economic realities of college sports. And that leaves the door open to what it is the NCAA has wanted to be able to argue all along. And that is that not all sports are created equal. Football certainly is not created equally from these other sports. And maybe some of these protections do not have to extend to every program the way they do in football. And the reason I think that benefits Vanderbilt specifically, we just talked about South Carolina, and I told you that I thought USC was at the bottom of the middle of the SEC in terms of situations right now, right?
Sure.
I think that places like Mississippi State and Arkansas are below that, where they are in bad geography. In the case of Arkansas, when you have LSU humming and both Texas schools, both major Texas schools in the SEC, where are they even going to pull talent from?
Sure.
Right. So those are worse situations than South Carolina, but Vanderbilt is in a worse situation even still, because we are in this new era of academics and sports coexisting, and other schools have found a way to make that work, and Vandy just hasn't. And it makes you wonder if they just are not interested in participating at the level you're going to have to in the SEC.
Yeah, and I was always interested from the standpoint because, of course, Vanderbilt has a very illustrious alumni base that
Sure.
makes quite a bit of money. When we got in the NIL world, did that mean that Vanderbilt was going to be able to close that gap a little bit? And in the past couple of years, that hasn't really happened. Now, this past offseason, when they lost basically half their roster and Clark Lee had to go begging to the people around Nashville and, other alumni like, hey, we need money, we're not going to have any talent. Then they finally started stepping up and were able to put together a decent roster based on the situation that they got to put in. But that does present an interesting question as this changes. Will a team like that again has been a doormat for so long in college football, could they finally start to turn the tide to where I'm not saying they're going to be a national championship contender by any means, but be more of a solid program than what we've known them to be?
I believe Vanderbilt's best finish, at least in our lifetimes, was was it the Music City Bowl? Is that where they ended up that year? James Franklin had them at 9-3.
That sounds correct. Let me double check on that, because he had a couple of.
He had his last two seasons. He had them in finishing in the top 25, but one of them, I think it was his last season, the SEC was extraordinarily good, and I think they still ended up in Birmingham.
Yeah, so the 2013 season was the last of Vanderbilt. They went 9-4, played in the BBVA Compass Bowl.
That was the Birmingham Bowl at that time.
The former PapaJohns.com Bowl. But yeah, they finished. They were ranked at the end of the year 24th. They finished fourth in the league standings. That's when Carolina and Missouri were both in the top 5. Georgia was a pretty solid team that year, at least, but did end up going 8-5. And the bottom of the barrel was kind of Florida, Tennessee, and Kentucky. But yeah, for that top 4, that was actually a pretty decent group of teams.
Yeah, Vanderbilt will tell you that their peers are not in the SEC. And in part, that is not true, because you are playing those teams every single year. But in part, it is. And the reason that that is still not good news is because the teams in major college football that Vanderbilt would consider its peers, Duke, Stanford, Northwestern. Well, Duke and Northwestern just had really great seasons in the new economic reality of college football. Stanford has amended its admission standards, and they have backtracked. Remember, Stanford at the beginning was firm. We are not going to do NIL. You do not come to Stanford for athletic opportunities. Hey, guess what changed this year?
Yeah.
Now Stanford athletes can go get NIL. All of these other schools have found ways to either succeed or make the changes necessary to remain relevant. What is Vanderbilt's problem right now? It may be something that changing admission standards, that changing the way they deal with NIL just cannot fix. And that is, you are always going to be number 16 in a conference in a geographic area where maybe there is not room for 16 elite programs to operate.
Well, and that's an interesting point that you bring up because all those other elite schools have had their own varying degrees of success over the years. I mean, Stanford was legitimately one of the best teams in college football year in and year out. When David Shaw was at his best, they had Andrew Luck, Toby Gerhart, Christian McCaffrey, the whole 9 yards. They've obviously fallen off in recent years, but yeah, Duke's had their time in the sun. Northwestern played for a Big Ten championship. Like, all these schools have had varying degrees of success, despite the fact their academic standards are really high. And Vanderbilt is just kind of like, yes, you are playing in the toughest league, but like outside of those couple great years with James Franklin, nothing.
Yeah, I mean, Vandy is renovating their stadium this year. I think that anyone that goes to Vandy might be playing around a crane at the 35-yard line as they rebuild the stands.
I'm very disappointed that the under construction stadium will not be in the college football game and the actual finished product will be.
I heard somebody in Vanderbilt's athletic department say initially their plan was for EA Sports College Football 25 for there to be cranes in the background of their stadium. And then in 26, you would see the full stadium, but they could not figure out a way that if you did a dynasty with Vanderbilt, you are not going to a stadium that is constantly under construction.
I love that they thought about that.
Yeah,
I
agreed.
appreciate that. And I get it. It's not easy to do in the game, but I would have loved to have seen that.
If you're Vanderbilt and you are always running to play catch up, even with someone like a South Carolina or Mississippi State, where there are some built-in disadvantages to the power tier of this conference, if you're Vanderbilt at the bottom of the bottom, were you going to be able to even entertain breaking off a salary for, forget just your football team, for every single team on campus? I don't know if afford is the right word. Maybe it's, would you entertain the possibility of having to do that? Like, I really think this ruling in the Johnson case yesterday, and that case, by the way, is far from over. It may be the difference in Vanderbilt staying in the SEC versus staying in major college football at all.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think what Idaho a couple years ago stepped down.
That's the only one I can remember voluntarily stepping down.
Took the Kibby Dome back down to FCS, but that's a very rare thing. And we really, I mean, outside of Washington State and Oregon State basically being forced to, we don't really see teams get booted from Power 5 conferences, and certainly don't do it voluntarily on their own accord. But is that something Vanderbilt might entertain down the line, of being like an AAC school or something like that?
So we're going to talk to Matt Brown coming up from the Extra Points newsletter. This is a guy that knows everything there is to know about the legal side of how deals are done in college football. And it's something I want to ask him, Tyler, because I don't know that Vanderbilt is hurting for funds necessarily. Like, I don't think that's the case. But if you're at a point where you have to make an even greater commitment in a way that your university is not structured to, do you want to stay the whipping boy of the SEC forever? Like, is just being good at baseball good enough for the people you're going and asking to provide the funds that then go to these athletes?
It is a pretty nice check every single year.
Right. And if I'm writing that check, I would like to see, look, it's not hard to get to the NCAA tournament, right? Sure. Like, at least show me you have a pulse in basketball. We're going to get to the point where probably 5 and 7 teams make bowl games in college football. We can't even get to that level if we're Vanderbilt. Right. So why do I keep writing you a check? That's the question I'd be asking, honestly.
It's a fair point.
All right, Matt Brown will join us coming up in just a moment. That is Tyler Head. I'm Demetri Ravanos. This is 107.5 The Game and the Game Network.
In Columbia, 100.5 in Florence, 100.3 in Myrtle Beach. Game Network. This summer, Hardee's and the Game are teaming up for back-to-school supplies. It's all about giving back. Help us by dropping off essential supplies like pens, pencils, folders, and calculators at Hardee's locations like 100 Beach Road in Blythewood. We will be on site July 13th, 20th, and 27th from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m.
Since you want to continue the conversation from the Vanderbilt thing, I'll let you intro him and jump into the first question.
Okay,
cool.
And I imagine we'll get into the game with him at some point too.
Yeah.
I mean, he's
for the information.
He's the guy.
See the entire line of Whirlpool appliances at 1421 Atlas Road. Whirlpool offers bigger, better, and more efficient appliances. And Jeffers McGill offers the best in customer service and low prices. Jeffers McGill and Whirlpool, your home team.
Appliances with Reliances. That's Jeffers McGill.
Do you remember your first Gamecock game? Who you were with and where did you sit? Where did you tailgate? What were you wearing? The idea that all those memories can come flooding back the moment you set foot on campus is real. So this year and every year, come to campus and catch a game. Whatever the game, whoever you're with, just catch a game. Get your tickets today and catch a game at any time for any sport. Online at GamecocksOnline.com.
At the Samuels Reynolds Law Firm, we know how serious injuries change people's lives. I'm Jason Reynolds. When you're involved in a major car or truck accident, my team is on your side. You don't have to be alone. Let's do this together.
I'm Steven Simmons. When you're hurt at work, my team is with you from start to finish. We're people with passion for helping injured workers. Bring your case to us and stop the run. We've got this.
Samuels Reynolds. True injuries, true lawyers. 803-779-4000.
This is Larry Leitner, owner and founder of Midstate Roofing. And for nearly 30 years, we've continued to be the proven leader in the roofing and waterproofing industry. Midstate Roofing's proven history is your assurance that our professionals at Midstate Roofing will provide the proper advice, service, and results to the needs of your facility in a manner both safe and pleasing to your operation. From high-rise to hospitals, manufacturing to industrial, Midstate Roofing designs and installs bonded systems with a protective guarantee that will keep your operation dry and running long into the future. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
And this is Blake Liner, reminding you to protect that roof with a maintenance contract. Call me today at 803-356-1919 or online at midstateroofing.com. That's midstateroofing.com.
You'll speak to an on-call technician after hours or a Midstate Roofing staff member during hours at 803-356-1919 or online at midstateroofing.com. And as always, tell them Midstate Twins.
If you have a leak, let Midstate Roofing take a peek.
Our trusted partner, TireRack.com, for their fast free shipping, free road hazard protection, convenient installation options, and their great selection of the best tires, like the highly consumer-rated Pirelli Scorpion Weather Active. But did you know they sell other automotive products? Wheels, brakes, and suspension, just to name a few. Everything you need to elevate your drive. You can go to TireRack.com/Dan. That's TireRack.com/Dan. TireRack.com, the way tire buying should be.
Hi, I'm Angie Hicks, co-founder of Angie. And one thing I've learned is that you buy a house, but you make it a home. Because with every fix, update, and renovation, it becomes a little more your own. So you need all your jobs done well. For nearly 30 years, Angie has helped millions of homeowners hire skilled pros for the projects that matter. From plumbing to electrical, roof repair to deck upgrades. So leave it to the pros who will get your jobs done well. Hire high-quality certified pros at Angie.com.
Get ready to smile because Herndon Chevrolet, your hometown Chevy dealer, is offering an amazing deal. Right now, get a whopping $20,000 off new Silverados. Yes, 20 grand off. Don't wait. Head over to HerndonChevy.com today and drive home in the truck of your dreams. Chevy, together, let's drive.
Herndon makes you want to smile.
803-510-5447 for complete details.
Powered by Integrated Media Game TV.
Or are you just gonna welcome back? You just want to give me a point and I'll do it all?
I'll give you a point.
Okay, cool.
What you're talking about. Sponsored by Love Chevrolet.
Back on the halftime show, he is Tyler Head. I am Dimitri Ravanas, and joining us on the phone right now, one of the go-to minds when it comes to legal issues in college sports. He is Matt Brown, a man that lives in the FOIA request folder. His Extra Points newsletter comes every single day, and I very much enjoy it. Sign up for it if you have not done so already. Matt, how are you today, man?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, you bet. I wanted to bring you on because of what you wrote this morning about the Johnson versus NCAA, I guess, decision, but the way you describe it, it was sort of like the courts punting on moving forward at all on whether or not athletes should be viewed as employees of these universities. And being in an SEC town, what I thought was really interesting about this, as I sort of game out in my head how this could go, is until we get a firm ruling that says athletes are absolutely employees, the conference never really has to deal with the Vanderbilt issue of, does it make sense for one of our members to even be here?
You know, that's an interesting question. I hadn't really thought about this in the context of kicking a school out or anything. I don't necessarily know if employment is what would be the catalyst for that. Like, what I can tell you, zooming out for a little bit, is that the ruling yesterday does not definitively state that any particular subgroup of athletes are or are not employees.
Mm-hmm.
The text of the ruling is definitely more pro-plaintiff than it is pro-NCAA, but there's some procedural questions. They want to have the lower court use a slightly different test to maybe determine whether this should be applied to everybody or maybe certain subsets of athletes. But there's between the NLRB, between other cases moving forward, the odds are of a court eventually requiring an employment classification for at least some group of athletes remains pretty high. The whatever federal judicial leeway the NCAA amateurism system enjoyed up until 2018 has been completely blown up, especially post Alston. Now, it is an interesting philosophical question, though, about how different kinds of institutions will respond to that, the same way that they're already kind of having to navigate what to do about revenue sharing.
Right.
And Vanderbilt can afford to do either. If college athletes are deemed employees, Vanderbilt has access to the money to continue to do that. Maybe the SEC or maybe other university presidents might want to move forward without Vanderbilt for some different financial reasons, which could change over the coming years. There's several different things challenging the NCAA status quo besides just legal challenges.
Yeah. I do want to make sure I understand the ruling kind of the way I think I do. And look, I'll be the first. Like, I've argued on these airwaves many times that there is no more valuable marketing employee to a university than a member of its football team. I think these guys should be paid. But if I am understanding this right, the judge almost basically says, let's throw the slippery slope idea out here, because not every slope has to be that slippery. He's sending this back to lower courts with the understanding that they can consider what he says are the economic realities of college sports. Is that right?
So that's part of it. So there's a bunch of different tests that legally are used to determine if somebody should be classified as an employee. Some of those tests have nothing to do with finances at all. And this is the thrust of the Dartmouth NLRB case. Many of those tests are centered on control, right? Yeah. Are you, this is important, right? Because we could be employees of a failing newspaper that doesn't make money and still be employees, or employees of a nonprofit. You would just be employees of like a failing organization. You're still being treated that way. Then there are also economic reality tests. So, and that's important because the original plaintiffs in Johnson are not LSU football players. These are FCS football players. These are guys that are not part of an enterprise that is cash positive. And so that is part of what's being re-examined here at the lower court level. And regardless of what happens here, right, we still have NLRB investigations. We have the case in Dartmouth. We have the case with USC. You have potentially one opening up at Notre Dame. There's 4 or 5 different other pathways to examine this question.
And talking to Matt Brown from the Extra Points newsletter here on the Halftime Show on the Game. And of course, when it comes to anything that's happening in court, it's a long drawn out process, as the NCAA knows very, very well. But let's say this does rule in favor where athletes do get the opportunity to become employees. And I know a lot of people have kind of targeted maybe the fall of 2025 as soon as that could potentially be implemented. What is the timetable, not only of the court case, but putting this kind of new system in place for college athletics?
Yeah, it's a good question, and if we're looking at this just from the judicial side, I think it would be difficult to imagine a world where some judges rule that athletes are employees, or some athletes are employees, and the appeals process is exhausted and it's implemented before 2026. I think we're probably at least 2 years away. This Johnson case now has been going on for a year and a half. and it probably still has at least a year to go. And then there's going to be appeals. And it's quite possible that this question goes up to the Supreme Court, because whoever rules that athletes are employees will be setting up a circuit split. However, the employment question could be changed voluntarily. And we're already having a very new system of college athletics, in all likelihood happening next year with direct revenue sharing, which could trigger additional employment lawsuits, right? If Clemson or if North Carolina or if anybody is paying $21 million in cash to athletes, that will definitely make it walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, it's probably employment argument even stronger.
Yeah. I do want to ask you, because I feel like this is something we have to ask a lot in 2024. Could the outcome of this thing change drastically based on the outcome of the U.S. election?
Unquestionably. And this is something that I don't think many of my colleagues in the national media and who are attorneys working in this world have fully grasped, or maybe they grasp it and they don't want to necessarily admit it. And this is the honest to God reality. I'm not making a value judgment. I'm just telling you how it is. What the NCAA wants, and what the commissioners of the SEC and ACC and Big Ten and Big 12 all want, is for Congress to pass a law that says, we don't care what the judges say.
Yeah.
College athletes should not be considered employees. We're gonna write in an exemption to the Fair Labor Standards Act. We're gonna codify the NCAA's amateurism definition into federal law and get around these kind of things. And then also give the NCAA the antitrust exemptions it needs to actually enforce those rules. And what's happened over the last 3 years is that Congress has been completely unwilling to do that. But the lawmakers that are most sympathetic to the NCAA and the ones that are most against the idea of athlete employment are all Republicans, and many of whom are in charge of committees now. If Donald Trump wins the presidential election, Republicans are almost certainly going to take back the U.S. Senate, and probably with room to spare. I think the most recent Cook Political Report projection has them between 54 and 55 seats. They're going to expand the House majority. The odds of somebody like Ted Cruz or Marco Rubio, who have been really quite pro-NCAA, or Tommy Tuberville, just passing this thing, change dramatically. And so, yes, there is very much a chance that Republicans could make all of these judicial arguments moot and just give the NCAA what they want.
The biggest win Tommy Tuberville will have had at an NCAA level in decades.
Yeah.
All right.
Normally, people who lose to UConn on the football field don't end up doing big things for the NCAA football. But, politics makes strange bedfellows of us all.
He is Matt Brown, the Extra Points newsletter. You can sign up for it and get it every single weekday. Matt, before we let you go, look, I know your life revolves around this video game right now because you have been the go-to source on information when it comes to EA Sports College Football 25. Does it feel like the end of a chapter of your life is coming on Tuesday when the first group of the general public gets their hands on it? Or is it just time to start doing FOIA requests for what's going to be in College Football 26?
Oh, man. Listen, the first couple of days, I'm definitely going to feel like Thanos, right? Like just like looking out over like the empty garden, like finally, balance, peace. Weird Redditors are not going to be in my DMs screaming at me about like, frame rates on shadows and stuff. Cause I like video games, but like, and this, and maybe all your listeners might not, like, I'm not a video game reporter. Like right. I'm a sports business reporter that kind of fell into this world. I'm going to play the game. I have a couple of national news stories that I've promised to write for other outlets about this game. We might do some streaming and some video content around the game. But I am looking forward to passing this torch to other people and revisiting this in an Extra Points kind of way in October and November. I am not the guy that's going to be able to teach you exactly how to set up your dynasty. That's a walk you're going to have to go with God yourself.
Last one for you here. Got about 60 seconds with the releases they've had of the trailers and the gameplay, all that kind of stuff. Is there anything that maybe you hadn't seen or something that surprised you from what you've seen released so far?
Most of the stuff that's been released were things I already knew because I've played the game and I've talked to a bunch of other developers. I do think that the gameplay changes are probably still being undersold or not fully appreciated by the general public. If you go into this game when you get the sticks and you try to play it exactly like you played NCAA 14, you are going to get rocked. It is a harder game in a lot of different ways. That doesn't mean it's bad. I think once people understand and learn how to use the new passing mechanics and learn how to figure out which kind of pitch you want to do, it's going to be very satisfying. But I want to just set everyone's expectations right now. You are not 20 years old anymore. You are now 40. Your reflexes are different. The game is different. Prepare yourself for throwing 3 picks in that first Sun Belt game.
Yep, I told my 13-year-old son that the line to play the game when it downloads at our house on Tuesday begins behind everybody that's been waiting 11 years to play a new version of the game. He may be waiting longer than he initially anticipated, if that's the case.
Hey, listen, you can start that download on Monday.
Oh, very good. That is what we will do.
Monday afternoon. Listen, that's why they pay me the big bucks. No.
Matt Brown, sign up for the Extra Points newsletter, buddy. Always good talking to you. Thank you so much.
You bet, fellas. Have a great rest of your day.
What is interesting to hear Matt talk about the Johnson versus NCAA case is just how wildly he thinks the 2024 election could swing the future reality for college sports in this country. Speaking of the 2024 election, last night, for everybody eagerly awaiting the ESPYs, you had to first sit through a press conference from the President of the United States, and it made me think about something that has happened in college football over and over and over again. And for some reason, we can't talk about it when it comes to the most important election in our lifetimes. We'll get into that next. That's Tyler Head. I'm Dimitri Ravanis. This is 107.5 The Game and The Game Network.
Game Network in Columbia. 107.5 The Game in Florence. 100.5 The Game in Myrtle Beach. 100.3 The Game. This summer, Hardee's and The Game are teaming up for a back-to-school supply drive that's all about...
He's fun.
I enjoyed that.
Oh yeah, no, we've had Matt on a couple times, just talking about the game and stuff. And the first time we had him on, I was like, "How exactly did you fall into being the video game reporter?" And he's talking about he was making an opens records request or something else, and just came across the information. I was like, "Oh crap, look at this."
I think he was the first one to really sort of break the news. And it was through those FOIA requests that there was going to be licensed music in the game, not just, fight songs and stuff like that.
Right. Which I enjoyed the fight songs in the original games.
Yeah, me too. But I mean, like, to create a real stadium environment, like, I think it's great that Sandstorm's going to be in it. And I heard the producer of the game on that Split Zone Duo podcast talk about that. Really, the only reason that you're not going to have Enter Sandman at Lane Stadium is because it is not ubiquitous. Like, it's only a Virginia Tech thing, and they couldn't justify the cost for it being a one-time use element.
I was going to say Metallica notoriously charges more than anybody else for their rights anyway. So, yes, for that, 30-second cutscene that a lot of people are going to skip in general, I can understand that.
Yeah. And this is another thing he talked about. Do you remember? I think it was the first PS3 version where you could do custom stadium sounds for the game. So like you could upload an MP3 of Enter Sandman if you wanted to.
I got you.
He said that is something that they want to see how well the game is received and if it is worth the fight for the copyright lawsuit they expect to have before they do it again. So it could, in the future, there could be a workaround if, Enter Sandman or something else does not make it into, like Dixieland Delight in Tennessee or Alabama.
That's kind of the funny part of, obviously they were breaking the amateur laws by putting players in without putting their names in it. And, we got to the point, because for the past 11 years, I've downloaded the updated rosters just about every single year. So it's almost like getting a new version of the game. But like once you got into the realm where you could share those kind of things, they should have just made it as generic of a game as possible. And we may not have gotten into this mess as bad as we did, but they continue to go with, hey, quarterback number 2, we know who that guy is, but we can't.
Well, that's what I've always said about this game is like the NCAA 13, NCAA 14, the quarterback for Alabama was QB 10, who was listed as from Mobile and had black hair. That was A.J. McCarron. All you had to do was give him a different number or put him as listed from somewhere else, and you avoid this problem.
They didn't.
Nope.
And I can't tell you how many hours I spent before the manual roster sharing going through and just having a printout of a roster and naming everybody appropriately.
Have I told you what my ultimate flex in that game used to be when I was in college?
What was that?
So one of my best friends from high school got recruited to play at Alabama. So I knew a lot of the freshmen on the team from the class in 99. I would hang out at his apartment. And my flex our freshman year used to be looking at a guy and saying, I will put you at quarterback and still beat you in this game.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And fix and flip. No income, no tax returns, 7.8%, APR 8.2, and 100% conventional with up to $15,000 down payment assistance. No payments, no interest on the DP. That rate is 7.2. Would you want to be your broker? Rate subject to change. Equal housing lender. Credit restrictions apply. NMLS.
What's interesting is this is the first time I've been really interested in being great at a game. Like
Well-
I intend to put in the time and effort to actually be very good at this.
1,000%.
Starting with the text.
What?
Starting with the text.
Yeah. Welcome back in. Halftime show, Tyler and Dimitri along with you on this Friday. It is time for our Firehouse Subs text of the hour, 803-404-6100. Monty weighs in and says, what do we got to do to get Dimitri on here more? He apparently is enjoying your thoughts and commentary on things, though Dimitri does join me every single Wednesday, typically between 9:30 and 10 o'clock, giving his insight on the dismal state of the Panthers and whatever else. So we do feature you every single week, just not as much as we have this week.
Monty, I'm going to assume your full name is Montgomery and say thank you very much. I'm just going to assume your full name is Montgomery because Monty Burns is my favorite Simpsons character.
There you go. There you go.
Did you see any certainly of the last week, you have seen all the conjecture and debate about whether or not Joe Biden is too old to be the Democrats' nominee for president this year, right?
Yes, correct.
Yesterday, he sort of had a 1-2 punch early in the day at a NATO conference. He identified President Zelensky of the Ukraine in the worst way possible. Let's hear that. At some point.
And now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin.
Oh, whoops.
President Putin. He's going to beat President Putin. President Zelensky.
And then at his press conference, he referred to his vice president, Kamala Harris, in the worst way possible.
Vice President Trump to be vice president, that I think she was not qualified to be president.
This would never happen in college football, right? Like Bobby Bowden, one of the best coaches ever. We were not delicate about saying you are too old, get out of here.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where, you can have the occasional Bill Snyder. Mac Brown's still out there coaching, obviously, and in his upper 70s. But age becomes, and I'll equate this even outside of football. But Paul Mainieri just got hired as South Carolina's new baseball coach, and he's 68 years old. People are like, oh my goodness, he's so old. It's like, well, I mean, coaching into your 70s is an outside that realm possibility. But we are very quick to want to start pushing the older coaches out the door. And I think there's this mindset of they don't adapt to the game as well and not willing to get up to speed with what's happening in the game and stuff like that. But yes, if I feel like if a theoretical Bobby Bowden were to have made these kind of mistakes in press conferences back in the day, it'd be like, all right, we're going to promote an assistant, we're going to hire somebody else new, and it's going to be done pretty quickly.
So that's a really good point. We never saw Bobby Bowden make these kind of mistakes in press conferences.
No.
You know who we did? And boy, not saying, hey, you're too old, get out of here, kind of came back to bite the school in the ass.
Who's that?
Joe Paterno.
Ooh.
I mean, now granted, what Joe Paterno let happen under his watch at Penn State happened long before he was too old to know what was going on, but certainly it would have been less embarrassing if he were not still your active head coach at that point.
Yeah. And I know some Penn State people that absolutely love Joe Pa, and the thought of firing him or forcing him to retire was seemingly sacrilegious up there in Happy Valley until they had no other choice but to do it. But you're not wrong. There did seem to be some slipping in those last couple of years that may be making a move beforehand. Again, that doesn't change anything that happened in the years before that, but you may have been able to put your program in a little bit of a better spot when that stuff did happen than where it was.
This is why I don't think you would have seen what is happening with Joe Biden right now happen in college football. There was a big difference between just having a high number next to your age, and not seeming like you know what's going on. And by the way, I'm not telegraphing how I'm voting here at all. Like, I think both of the major candidates we have, and when you consider the third candidate let a worm eat his brain, like, it's an embarrassment for our country all around, right? But my point is that it is not the number next to the age that's the problem. Nick Saban was 72 and still adapting to the new realities of the sport every single season. It is are you capable of doing the job we hired you for that we just don't let a coach get to. We don't let anybody get to in any job, it seems like.
And using the context of what this conversation is in the last minute here, removing a coach from coaching a college football program is a lot easier than changing the position of a political leader.
But you know what it wouldn't be, Tyler? If America had boosters. America needs a bagman.
Is that your platform?
That is my platform. Elect me president.
All right, Dimitri Ravano is president 2024. You heard it here first, folks.
You can see my sign right now. It's my name inside of a star, and underneath in red it says "America needs a bagman."
We'll see how that goes on the almost said recruiting trail, on the campaign trail.
Why not both?
Yeah, I'll write you in this fall. How about that?
Very good.
2 hours in the book, 1 more hour to go. It is halftime show. He's Dimitri. I'm Tyler on your Friday on the Game.
I think we kept that pretty apolitical, right?
Well, people on the text line don't seem to think so.
Well, of course they don't.
Broadcasting live from the Herndon Chevrolet Studios. Save up to $20K off new Silverados. Stop by or shop online today and see why Herndon Chevrolet makes you smile. Together, let's drive.
Does that mean you are not happy with me at the moment?
No. Sorry, I was responding to a text message. I was
giving
an answer back to somebody. No, I think that was totally fine. Not politically choosing an example.
Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union wants to reward you for saving more of your hard-earned money, and they can't think of a better way to do it than with more cash. When you participate in Palmetto Citizens Save to Win, and quarterly prize drawing for a chance to win up to $500.
We said nothing of the sort, Dave.
It doesn't mean we don't feel that way, though, Dave.
Get the ball rolling on your savings plan. With a Save to Win account, there's nothing to lose and everything to win. Open your 12-month Save to Win term certificate account and start saving today by visiting any of Palmetto Citizens' 14 branches across the Midlands, or go to palmettocitizens.org to learn more. Palmetto Citizens, proudly serving the Midlands since 1936. Account may be subject to penalty for early withdrawal. This credit union is federally insured by the NCUA.
Honey, look, the hookers. They've moved off the highway and now they're all over the parking lot.
What are all those Schroeder's towing trucks doing in that parking lot, though?
Must be towing all those unauthorized cars parked in the lot. Good thing the business owner called Schroeder's Towing to keep their parking lot clear for just their customers. Didn't those cars see the free signage that Schroeder's provides to business owners to deter unauthorized parking?
I guess not.
Schroeder's Towing, the best and fastest hookers in town.
I chose public health nursing because as a mom, I wanted to spend more quality time with my family.
Nation, writing, sports.
And help others while also having a healthy work-life balance. It's also important to me to have an employer who understands and values my priorities in life. Make public health your passion.
For more information, visit dph.sc.gov/careers.
what you're talking about. Sponsored by Love Chevrolet, South Carolina's #1 volume Chevy dealer. Don't let the summer of savings pass you by. I-26 at Harbison and lovechevy.com. Together, let's drive.
Hey y'all, Jay Phillips here for my good friend at Dan's Fan City in Harbison. Ceiling fans don't sound like something you think about a lot because you don't really need to, but when you've got good ones, they work so well. Keeping energy costs down and your comfort level up. All kinds of fans at Dan's Fan City, big to small and quiet, quality fans. They have accessories and light kits, fan blades, and more. Stop by and see them soon, Harbison Boulevard next to Total Wine, or call Dan's Fan City, 781-FANS. You'll be glad you did.
We keep the clutter out of your gutter. Call on the gutter man.
The Gutterman offers a variety of cards for your gutter. Protect your biggest investment. Call the guys in the Powder Blue Trucks. Locally owned and operated for 46 years. Call 791-71.
You tell I don't like to comb my hair.
791-71.
I hadn't even thought about it, but that is what hats are for, Tyler.
Typically, I try and maximize the amount of sleep that I can get.
Sure.
Use as much little time to get ready in the morning, so a lot of times it's hat and out the door.
It is, honest to God, the reason that I shave my head.
So, but were you like balding or anything, or you just
So at this point, I would probably have the classic horseshoe, but when I started shaving my head, I still had hair.
Okay. See, that's the way. Like, get ahead of it, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, my dad has had the horseshoe for as long as I can remember. I don't mind being bald, but I am not doing that.
I think that's a fair assessment. It's about integrity, dang it.
That's right. Congrats, y'all.
Sponsored by Traditions Fine Jewelry and Gamecock Traditions. 2 locations in
Welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head and Demetri Ravennos along with you on this Friday to quell everyone's fears from the last segment. No, we were not getting political. We were just merely using an example to drive a sports conversation. So please put down your pitchforks and torches.
What political take was I making there, aside from Bobby Bowden was very old?
I do not know, but people get upset about a lot of things. So I'm just trying to cover our tracks here to make sure that we are crossing our T's and dotting our I's. Let's talk about more fun things. How about the Carolina Panthers?
I was about to say, let's talk about something that puts a smile on everybody's face, like the Carolina Panthers.
You, of course, host the This Team is Killing Us, a podcast about Carolina Panthers due to good people. And you and your co-host, Lauren, I think sometimes I'd much rather talk about anything else but what the state of this team is and what dumb thing David Tepper and his wife may be doing at that point in time. But from a content standpoint, it's a gift that keeps on giving, right? Because you guys always have something to talk about.
That's true. This week we talked about this video that's been going around that Twitter, who cannot be trusted, claims to show, and by Twitter, I mean people on Twitter, not the company, claims to show Nicole Tepper having influence in who they picked in the first round. Now, by the way, I'm doing this show today in the one state that probably does not care if that's true or not, because they picked somebody that everybody in South Carolina tends to like in Xavier Legette, right? Sure. But I think if you watch this video, it is clear what is happening is somebody asked Nicole about the conversation she and Dave had about the draft, and she just said what her opinion is. There is no reason to believe she had actual influence on who the team took in the NFL draft. There are a lot, you're right, like the Teppers are the gift that keeps on giving in terms of content, because both of them are truly objectionable human beings. But we do not have to make up instances to dislike them when there are so many real reasons to dislike them.
Sure. Well, and the thing about them is they seem very disconnected from reality, which I guess you can make that standpoint from a lot of people that are very high up on the financial ladder, that they don't deal with the same world that you and I routinely live in. But when the way Tepper, exposes himself in that way, and going back to the hat thing on the night of draft night and the water being thrown at the fan down there in Jacksonville, it just it's more amplified with somebody like him because he really just doesn't get it.
No, Lauren loves to harp on his statement that he is the person that brought music to the people of North Carolina, because now there are more concerts in Bank of America Stadium than there used to be.
I have to ask this question, and I know you're not a newer age wrestling fan like myself, but there's this running joke. Stephanie McMahon, who's the daughter of Vince McMahon and has been an executive in WWE for a long time. In the past 10 years, women's wrestling's gotten a lot more attention, right? They had something called the Women's Revolution, and Stephanie McMahon, in a way, kind of took credit for it. So the running joke is that she created women's wrestling like 7 years ago.
Sure.
Kind of run with that. So is that kind of the joke with David Tepper? Like, oh, well, thank God he created music in the city of Charlotte, or else we never would have had anything.
Yeah, I think it's a little more intense with Tepper and music in Charlotte, because look, Bank of America Stadium was underutilized, but like music is such a specific thing to claim to have brought to a town. And also, by the way, Tyler, like, I believe there are multiple musicals about con men bringing music in some form or fashion to a town that it really hits a very specific stereotype of out of touch dingus.
Has Taylor Swift played Bank of America Stadium?
No, she is not. Beyonce has not played Bank of America Stadium. Nobody that anyone under 50 would get super jazzed about has played Bank of America Stadium.
Is he really doing that great of a job at bringing music to Charlotte then, if that's what we're getting?
I mean, look, Billy Joel has been there twice. That's 2 more times than he was there before. No, I'm with you. I mean, like, every time he's like, oh, we brought music to Charlotte, I say out loud, I'm pretty sure I've seen Pearl Jam and Foo Fighters there long before you knew what Charlotte was. Right? And also, by the way, not in Bank of America Stadium. All the cool music happens far from Bank of America Stadium.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure I recall plenty of bands wanting to play there before Tepper was ever involved in what was going on down there. But I don't know, maybe that's his revisionist history, like where he can do the little Men in Black thing and wipe your memory, where you have no memory of seeing the Foo Fighters back in 2004 or something like that.
Yeah, listen, as a resident of Raleigh, I love that none of the cool stadium concerts are going to Charlotte, because it's the reason U2 came here. It's the reason Beyonce came here. I mean, it is certainly, we in Raleigh love his idea of bringing music to Charlotte for sure. As much as there is negative to talk about the Carolina Panthers, though, Tyler, have you noticed that there is this weird, like, they've sort of become the darling hot take of they will win the NFC South or make the playoffs or something like that?
Well, the thing about the NFL, nobody sucks forever. Now,
It's true.
the Browns had a pretty good run of it for a while, but they've at least gotten themselves into a somewhat relevant conversation. So I think people look at an organization like the Panthers that, again, is not all that far removed from having good success themselves, going to a Super Bowl, the whole 9 yards. So it's like, okay, I want to be the first person to be able to say, hey, see, I told you so. I knew that Bryce Young, or I knew that Dave Canales, that was going to be the key to whatever that rebuild was going to be. I think they just want to hop on that train first to claim that they were the first one on it.
Adam Chernoff is from Right Angle Sports. He was on The Herd with Colin Cowherd on Fox Sports Radio. This is back in May. I want to play you what he said, because literally moments after he said what he did about thinking that they are a fringe playoff team, all of the big Vegas sports book moved the Panthers win total from 4.5 to 5.5.
This is putting Bryce Young in a much better position with the modern coaching staff that is coming in, led by Dave Canales. When you look at what Canales has done in his career, he led Russell Wilson to his best ever career passing in Seattle. He led Geno Smith, who everybody wrote off, to his best season that was better than anything Wilson had in Seattle. And then last year, he revives Baker Mayfield, another QB that everybody wrote off. Bryce Young, very similar situation. He's now got weapons around him. He's got competent coaching. And to me, J-Mac, this looks a lot like the Jags in 2021 and 2022. You had Lawrence, the number 1 pick, come in at QB, was in a very bad coaching staff situation. Expectations came way down after year 1, year 2. There's the playoff run.
It has been my belief for a long time, really since that 2022 season, that everybody wants to be ahead of whatever the next Jaguars situation is going to be, because they looked hopeless in 2021. The Panthers looked hopeless in 2023. The Jaguars went out, got a veteran pass catcher in Christian Kirk that year to start that turnaround. Is Deontay Johnson that guy? I don't know. I'm not buying the Panthers as a playoff team. I think they will be better, but a playoff team or a division champ, like I just cannot make that leap.
Well, the one thing is the NFC South has been the worst division in the NFL for the past couple of years. So that bar to win the division, we've seen some bad NFC South winners in years past. I remember when the Falcons and the Panthers in 2014 were fighting for the division title.
I mean, just 2 years ago, right? Didn't the Buccaneers make the playoffs at 8 and 9?
They did make the playoffs at 8 and 9. That would have been Brady's last game.
Yep.
When they lost the Cowboys in that playoff game. So we've seen a lot of bad NFC South teams win the division because, hey, one of these 4 teams has to do it, right? And
right.
when you kind of look around the rest of the league, you know, Atlanta obviously starting over again with Raheem Morris. New Orleans, they're not very confident in what Derek Carr is going to be with them going forward. Tampa Bay, they're okay. They've kind of been the default best team in the South for the past couple of years, but even they haven't been as good as they were a handful of years ago. So that climb back to the top in the division is not like this, oh my God, you got to go out there and be better than the Chiefs or something like that. So the path back to the playoffs for the Panthers isn't as hard as it would be in some divisions. But I agree with you. I don't think they're necessarily a playoff team this year, but they have at least gone out in the offseason and addressed the many areas of need that they have on this team.
SB Nation is the latest publication to sort of go out on the bold stance that the Panthers will win the division. And look, everything you said, Tyler, is true. Like, it's not just bad talent on the field. It is different levels of incompetence that each of these teams have, right? Like, the Falcons were just the butt of jokes for a whole month after the NFL draft for the way they are handling their quarterback situations. I have heard NFL personnel people openly mock and laugh at the idea of Dennis Allen getting a head coaching job again now that he is the coach of the Saints. And this is a story I've told on the podcast before, but I've probably not told you. So I have an uncle, lived in Tampa, worked as a contractor for the Buccaneers, and he would always send me Buck stuff. So I grew up a Buccaneers fan.
Okay.
After Brady retired, going and signing Baker Mayfield was enough for me to cut the cord and just embrace Carolina, because I believe Mayfield is the ultimate, well, we're not going to tank, but we're not really going to try to win sort of signing you can make in the NFL. I get it. In a landscape like that, a lot can happen. But as much as people are talking about finally some receivers that can get separation, they didn't do anything to address the left tackle problem in Charlotte, and that can derail everything.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. And seeing here because they signed the 2 guards, Hunt from Miami and Lewis from Seattle, which again the entire offensive line was an issue. But yeah, especially a spot like left tackle, which is deemed to be perhaps the most important position on the entire football field. If you're struggling in that area, even the rest of your offensive line may suffer because of that. So yes, that is certainly a glaring omission from what they could have done this offseason.
Yeah, and when you're struggling in that area and your quarterback is sub 5'10" and sub 200 pounds, like, you can't let him take some of the unevaded shots that Ike Ekwonu let Bryce Young take last year.
And that's why I'm not the person that's going to jump on and say, oh, Bryce Young's a bust. And similar to what we were talking about with the Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence a couple seasons ago, everybody was like, man, we thought this was, the next Peyton Manning. What the heck's wrong with this kid? You're number one, but you just didn't have the team or the coaching around him to get the most out of him. And obviously Doug Peterson goes down there, and it's been like a completely different shift for Trevor Lawrence really ever since then. So I don't know if Dave Canales is that answer for Bryce Young, but it's certainly can't be any worse than what they had last year.
Well, look, as much as I think the offensive line is going to dictate a lot about Bryce Young's success in year 2, I do want to take a look at where the Panthers absolutely have improved, and that is in the receiving game. And a lot of that, in my opinion, not in everyone's, has to do with the aforementioned Xavier Legette. We will dive into exactly what it is he has to do in teal and black this upcoming football season. That is next. He is Tyler Head. I am Dimitri Ravanos. This is the Halftime Show on 107.5 The Game and The Game Network.
From the Midlands to the PD to the beach, The Game Network.
So what's new this year at the SEC Media Days? The first major media appearance for 2 new members of the SEC.
See, I wish the Panthers were half decent and give us reasons to talk about them more.
Yeah.
Because like when you're losing every single game last year, it's like, what can we say?
Yeah. I agree with you. It is really, it is not ideal to have launched a podcast last year, right? Our company was trying to put together a trip to Germany because they're going to play the Giants in Munich. And the travel agent company we were working with said we need 20 people in order to do the trip. And we just came to the conclusion, like, this is not the year to ask people to make that move.
It's probably not the best idea.
Yeah.
So it was the Bryce Young thing your idea, or did they come to you with that idea for the podcast?
Well, so I'm a partner in this company, and we knew we wanted to do a Panthers podcast, and we knew we wanted to do it with Lauren. We just didn't really know what the hook was going to be. And then, when they drafted Bryce, Lauren and I used to work together on the radio, and have been friends this whole time.
Yeah.
And I said, like, this seems like a no-brainer to me, right? Because Lauren is such a pessimist of a Panthers fan.
Yeah.
And I will happily give up my integrity to defend Bryce Young.
Yeah.
But obviously year 2, we're not going to be doing the same podcast. That's why we changed the name and changed the look of it and everything.
I think that's very appropriate.
Yeah. Look, I still have my sweet Tiny Prince hat right here.
Oh, there you go. So if the team does turn a corner, do you have to change the name again?
No, I don't think so, because there's such a history of, like, this team has never made it to the playoffs 2 years in a row.
So it's like, even if they were to put together a good season, that collapse is not.
Yeah, it's going to happen like in no time.
That's fair. I think that's fair.
Yeah, it's funny. When I first moved up here, it was still the John Fox era. That was the tail end of the John Fox era. But I remember from the outside looking in thinking, man, John Fox is a really good coach. And then getting here and actually looking at it and being like, well, I don't know if he is or isn't.
Yeah, he was. He took him to the Super Bowl. They played the Patriots, right?
That first one, yeah.
Yeah. That is like, because that was that. Is that 04?
It was whatever year Janet Jackson showed her boob.
I think that was 04.
I think it was the 04 Super Bowl after the 03 season, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think that is like one of my earliest Super Bowl memories I remember.
Yeah.
And like the only thing I remember from that game was my infatuation with Rod Smart because of the He Hate Me thing.
He Hate Me,
NFL.
sure.
And like my dad told me about that, and I thought that was the coolest thing ever, that guy was nicknamed He Hate Me. And I was like fixated on him the entire game for whatever reason.
Yeah, he might have been the second best receiver on that team.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. They have such a huge, like a long history of like, oh, we got one, we're fine.
Yeah.
Like the year that Cam took them to the Super Bowl after Greg Olsen. It's a virtual who's who of who's that of receivers.
I feel like what Jake Delhomme is on that list of trivia question quarterbacks, like, oh yeah, that guy played in a Super Bowl one time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think as much as
Rex
Rex Grossman. Oh shoot, who was the quarterback for? Oh no, it was still Peyton that was a quarterback for the Colts against the Saints that year, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Dilfer is the ultimate trivia question answer of having won a Super Bowl.
Well, Dilfer is so well known to be the worst quarterback to win a Super Bowl. It's not even a trivia question anymore. Because that's fair. Dilfer.
And I would say outside of Tony Eastman for that Patriots team that just got their doors blown off by the 85 Bears, I would say number 3 on that list of worst to play in a Super Bowl or to win a Super Bowl. Excuse me. Oh no, so I guess number 2 to win a Super Bowl probably has to be Flacco.
Yeah, but like even Flacco stepped up in the playoffs at least.
Sure. That's what I'm saying. Like he's not Dilfer, but the Ravens have a history of turning bad quarterbacks into Super Bowl champions.
Well, I guess that spells bad for them since Lamar's their quarterback now. He's actually good.
That's right. That's why he can't perform in the playoffs. He's too good.
Welcome back in. Halftime show. Tyler and Dimitri along with you for a few more minutes here, going up until 3. Then Jay and Elijah again. We taking over for the post-game show live out at Craft and Draft on Divine Street. That is 2706 Divine Street. They'll be out there from 3 until 6 today for the post-game show. That's one of the 12 locations you can use a Craft Beer Passport at, by the way. You can go online to 1075thegame.com, click on the Sweet Deals tab, and get it a $306 value, all yours for just $79. I don't imagine they're going to be talking a lot about the Carolina Panthers, though maybe the topic of conversation of Xavier Legette will come up. Given the fact that you are up in North Carolina, have the Panthers contingent up there gotten more used to his accent now that he's been there for a couple of months?
Yeah, he has quickly been embraced as like that is not just our receiver, but he is also our mascot. I think that now listen, I loved him playing for Carolina last year. I, from the get-go of the draft process, said this is one of 3 guys that I will feel like we absolutely won the draft, even without a first-round pick, if we come away with Xavier Legette. But the fact that it's the accent combined with the things he talks about, that he's absolutely become a fan favorite like that.
I was listening to y'all's podcast the other week where you played the clip of him talking about having a job at Popeyes for like 2 weeks.
Yes.
And Lauren was like, I lost him on the 9th word and never got back on track. Though for somebody like myself that's been around a lot of folk from South Georgia, I understood every word perfectly.
It's funny. Everybody in the national NFL media kind of went off negative, but like was really charmed by Keon Coleman in Buffalo talking about buying suits at the Dillards in his very thick Louisiana accent. And that's what I grew up around.
Sure.
And what's weird is, and maybe it's because I've been in the Carolinas now for almost 20 years, Coleman is the one I kind of have to slow down and think about what he's. I have no trouble understanding Xavier Legette.
Very similarly to like Coach O. It's a very different dialect down there in Louisiana where like, and it's mixed with like the Frenchness of it and as well as Southern accents. And I mean, Coach O had the gravelly voice, which I don't think
that's the difference. That's the big difference between. Yeah, that's the big difference between Coleman and Coach O is Coleman. I think his voice more reflects, and it's funny. This is what but Xavier Legette's voice reflects out of Carolina as well. It reflects that it's like, it's really hot down here. We're not in a hurry to put out any extra effort, right? Whereas Coach O had the little more gravelly voice to him. Like Keon Coleman is like Louisiana slow and easy. And you can kind of hear that with Xavier Legette too.
I like to equate the Louisiana accents to Southern accents with kind of your pinky out where you're drinking.
Yeah.
It's got a little bit of a fancier shine to it. But yes, the folks of Mullins, very proud of Xavier Legette, and a lot of folks out there probably speak the same way that he does. And that's okay. That's great. I love it.
I think they should be proud of him too, not just because of the character nature, but this team is going to put him in a really good position to be in the conversation for Offensive Rookie of the Year. Obviously, quarterbacks are always going to be judged a little more intensely, whether that is positive or negative for that award. But Xavier Legette is likely going to start as the Z receiver for the Panthers, the number 2 guy in that 1-2 set that you think of in old school football. Deontay Johnson will be the X guy, the guy they are counting on to be the big play breaker. But you look at the problems this team had last year, whether it was getting separation and just getting open, whether it was the disappointment of guys like Jonathan Mingo is the one that comes to mind. I would put Hayden Hurst in this category to a certain extent as well, where they could just never follow through on a catch. And I think one of the things that separated Xavier Legette from the 2 Texas receivers, who, by the way, were the other 2 guys I've been saying all along, I'd be really happy if they come away.
Sure.
If the Panthers come away from the draft with, is that Xavier Legette has shown over and over again he has some pretty sure hands. And when you combine that with the speed, That's just something that Carolina's been missing for so long, and you cannot be missing that when you are starting completely over in your passing game like they were last year.
It is, and I think him going into, like you said, being that Z spot, be that 2 receiver, is maybe setting him up for a little bit more success, as opposed to if you didn't have a Deontay Johnson, you're just throwing him out there saying, hey,
Yeah.
you're a first-round pick. You have to be our number 1 guy here. We're all counting on you to make this offense better. That might be a little bit of a struggle, considering the fact that he does have some development with things like route running and that kind of stuff to still get up to speed to at the NFL level. That's going to take a little bit of time, which of course they're working on it in the offseason. It's going to be a big part of camp for him as well, that, he might not be 100% on right out of the jump when the season starts.
Yeah, I mean, look, the SEC is the toughest college football league in the country. I don't want to take anything away from that, but in college football, there is always the possibility that you can just out-talent your opponent. He's not going to be able to do that in the NFL, certainly not in year one. I also think the other thing that is key about adding Deontay Johnson is I really think part of the Panthers' passing game's problem last year, let's say all those P's 4 times fast, is that Adam Thielen was asked to sort of act as the X receiver. And Adam Thielen's not an X. Adam Thielen is naturally a slot, which is why he's going to slide inside this year. And it's not about talent. That's about that's about talent in its most effective place, if that makes sense.
And Adam Thielen also has dealt with injuries. He's in his 30s now. He's not a spring chicken from his days in the early 20s when he was up there as one of the better receivers in the league when he was in Minnesota. So asking him to do that was kind of setting him up for failure in a way, by asking him to do something that he wasn't physically adept to do, for one, and two, not his natural position, like you said, of where he lined up on the field. So yeah, moving him kind of into that slot role, he can probably thrive a little bit more. Again, the age is still a factor, the injury history and all that kind of stuff. But I like the structure of what they're building in their wide receiver room going into this year, much more than what they had a season ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think that last year, Jonathan Mingo was a real disappointment in his rookie season. And I don't think you should close the book on that dude. But I think that whether or not, whether it was Frank Reich or whether it was Scott Fitterer, who was the former GM, or anybody else, whether or not they will say that they really kind of envisioned Bryce and Mingo developing together the way, say, Marvin Harrison Sr. and Peyton Manning did.
Right.
I think that was kind of an idea they had, which is why I don't think you close the book on Mingo. I think playing as the number 4 receiver this early in his career is probably better for him. But certainly, look, I pointed this out on our last podcast to Lauren. If you look at how little they let Bryce throw in the preseason last year, he threw an inordinate amount of balls to Jonathan Mingo. And it was clear late in the season, he just didn't trust Mingo anymore as a receiver. This is a chance to rebuild that. And suddenly you're looking at 4 weapons as opposed to just one you can rely on in Adam Thielen.
Yeah, absolutely. But like you said, at the end of the day, if they can't keep Bryce Young upright, he's not going to be able to let things develop down the field and get the ball to those guys out in open space. So that's kind of priority number 1. And again,
it's the number 1 thing when you see those like way too early mock drafts that have the Panthers drafting number 1 again and drafting Carson Beck.
Right.
I always push back on it. It's not because of my love for Bryce Young. It is because, like, if they are going back to the drawing board and picking number 1 again, surely they know if they do not replace Ike Ekwonu at left tackle, they are going to be right back in the same boat, no matter who the quarterback is.
I guess that all depends on what Nicole Tepper decides she wants to pick, right?
Coming up next, my partner on this team is killing us. Lauren Brownlow will join us to continue the Carolina Panthers conversation. That is Tyler Head. I'm Dimitri Ravanos. You are listening to the Halftime Show on 107.5 The Game.
That was a good outline. Yeah, I couldn't resist an extra dig. What was that?
Henry McMaster, David Pepper, billionaire, homeless, tent camp.
Dave, we already said we're not going to get political.
You're assured that our professionals at Mid-State Roofing will provide the proper advice.
I'll let you make that suggestion, Dave.
Don't forget the exit on I-77 that doesn't go to anywhere.
dry and running long into the future. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
And this
No comment.
reminding you to protect that roof with a maintenance contract. Call me today at 803-356-1919 or online at midstateroofing.com. That's midstateroofing.com.
You'll speak to an on-call technician after hours.
So you can intro Lauren for this one. Yeah.
356-1919 online at midstateroofing.com. And as always, tell them Midstate Twins.
If you have a leak, let Midstate Roofing take a peek.
Great news! Carolina Honda Powerhouse is extending our July 4th promotion through the end of the month. Upgrade to a Honda ATV or side-by-side now and get amazing freebies. Get a free winch with any new full-size Honda ATV or a free top and windshield with any new Honda Pioneer 700 or 1000. Hunting season is just around the corner, so don't miss out. Now through July 31st while supplies last. See us for full details. Take exit 70 off I-20 and turn by the Flying J or visit carolinahonda.com.
Powered by Integrated Media, Game TV, sponsored by Shepherd's Glass, a true reflection of quality. The Game TV, sponsored by Shepherd's Glass.
Hey guys, Jay Phillips here for my good friends at Integrated Media, Columbia's leader in today's technology for your home and business. They've got TVs from Sony and Samsung, surround sound systems from Dolby, Sonos wireless speakers, Wi-Fi that works everywhere, even cameras to see what's going on around your home. They've got you covered. Call Integrated Media at 803-948-8327. Set up a time for them to come out to your house and talk with you about your wants and your needs. You want to cut the cord? They can help. Want one of those beautiful Samsung frame TVs that looks like art when it's not turned on? They do that too. Plus fantastic outdoor systems that let you enjoy your favorite team, movie, TV show, or music while you also enjoy our beautiful South Carolina weather. You can even stop in and see them at the Experience Center, 105 Snapdragon Court and Chapin, and get a real idea of what these things look like in your home. Do what I've done, and many of your friends and neighbors. Call 803-948-8327 and get home theater like never before from Integrated Media.
In the South Carolina Midlands, AAA Heating and Air is your year-round ally against the changing weather. Start with a free replacement estimate. They set the tone for quality and affordability. Let their expert team ensure your home is always an oasis of comfort, and with guaranteed financing, this luxury is more accessible.
We talked earlier about, Dawn Staley winning the SB and she's probably got a warehouse of trophies at this point in time. What do you think Saban does with his SB?
I would be surprised if it made it home with him.
Just hands it to some janitor on the way out.
It's going in one of his Mercedes dealerships.
I was gonna say, does he have like a basement under the lake house that he can just toss him down there for?
It's a good question. Did you watch that HBO documentary with him and Belichick?
I did not. I heard about it.
So, it was like the two of them hanging out at his lake house talking football. I made note to my wife when we were watching it, there is no trophy anywhere in that house. Like that you never saw a trophy.
Yeah, it's one of those things that if you did not know better, you would not know that house belongs to Nick Saban.
That's right. Well, you probably would based on its size.
I guess, but I guess, and again, I've never achieved that level of success or had that much money. Maybe you truly want something that you can disconnect from your everyday life with.
Right.
So any semblance of Alabama football or anything football related is a no-go there.
It could be.
He just let Miss Terry design the whole thing.
Yeah, that's right.
Look, you get enough football in our house. This one's mine.
Also, he could loathe having those things around in his house. That's rat poison after all.
On your home of the Gamecocks in Columbia, 107.5.
Tyler, I'm honestly concerned that we have spent the last 32 minutes this deep in Carolina Panthers conversation.
It's something we don't usually get to do.
Yeah, it's normally something me and Lauren Brownlow do, in part because we have built a podcast out of it. But here I am dragging the innocent people of South Carolina in. So I'm also going to drag in Lauren.
Do we fall in that category of good people that the Carolina Panthers like to harm?
I mean, Lauren, certainly. I think I would call you a good person, right? Oh, no. Did we lose Lauren?
Do we have Lauren Day?
Hello?
There she
There
is.
she is.
There we go.
That joke would have been a lot better if you were there, Lauren.
It's okay. I mean, that was your answer then, I guess. It's whether I'm a good person is, maybe not. I do my best. I try.
We were talking about sort of this weird, and you and I have talked about this on the show before, this weird reality we find ourselves in where suddenly the Panthers to win the NFC South has become a really popular hot take. And how are you and I the only two seeing that the biggest problem with this team has not been addressed?
Oh my gosh. Wait, that's a hot take? That's the thing now that people are saying? Why?
Oh, yeah.
Why? Please don't.
Okay, so here's why, Lard. Everybody is pointing to how much better the receiving core is, which you and I agree is true, right? But you and I also agree that there is no reason to think Bryce Young's going to have any more time to throw the ball this year than he did last year.
Right, because this team doesn't seem to think it has a left tackle problem. And you know what? I hope it's right, but my eyeballs told me differently last year. Sorry, I loved watching Ickey play college football at NC State. He was a lot of people don't understand how to watch the offensive line. Let's be honest. If you didn't play football, especially, you don't really get it. But to watch a dude out there just running downfield and pancaking guys, that's fun for everyone.
Sure.
I love Ickey, but it's not. Last year was a disaster, and
that's something that, people here in the SEC footprint probably, I don't know how close everybody here in South Carolina watched Ickey or knew of Ickey when he was coming out of NC State. You obviously covered the ACC. Is anything you saw of him at NC State, did it give you a preview? Did it give you an inkling that this was a possible outcome for him in the NFL to be this lost at times?
Not even a little. Well, okay. The one knock on him coming out was he's not as natural of a pass blocker as he was a run blocker, right? And my thing was all right, but he's clearly athletic and for his size and everything like that, and clearly has pretty good instincts and whatever. I never saw him have a stretch like that. No, he was very reliable throughout his entire collegiate career, from what I remember.
So Dimitri and I were talking a little bit earlier where, a lot of people are equating this version of the Panthers to what happened with the Jaguars a couple seasons ago, where Urban Meyer came in and just ran a disastrous train of a program, nearly ran Trevor Lawrence in the ground in year one. And people wondered, what was going to happen after that. Obviously, Doug Peterson comes in, got the team back on the right track, and everything's been pretty okay since then. But you welcome in Dave Canales as your new head coach. And a lot of the reason for hiring him was what he can do with Bryce Young from a quarterback development standpoint. He obviously has a long list of guys that he's helped to his point in his NFL career so far. But with so many fires seemingly needed to be put out when it comes to the Panthers this offseason, is he the guy that can truly handle all that in addition to developing Bryce Young at the same time?
Yeah, and then not to mention, obviously becoming a head coach for the first time. Throw that into the mix at a relatively young age, I think, I'm very cautiously optimistic with him, because I like that for, kind of a young mind, a young offensive mind, it's not something that we've really ever seen the Panthers do, so at least it's something different. It's something new. It's a big enough change for me that I'm all right, well, let's just see where this goes. And the guys that he's worked with certainly speak very highly of him and everything else. I think as bad as the last year, I don't think their personnel was as bad as if that makes sense. I don't think their personnel was as bad as they looked. The personnel was not good, don't get me wrong, but the NFL has a lot more parity than college football, right? You should be able to beat some of the other teams that are just as bad as you. And the Panthers sometimes look like they'd never played football before. So, do I think that a different coach can get more out of them? Do I think a coach like Dave could get more out of them? Yes, I do. What that looks like, I don't think I'm looking for any quick fixes. No.
It is a little bit tough, Tyler, to have a conversation like this, an interview like this with Lauren, because I know everything she thinks about the Carolina Panthers already. I describe myself as her emotional support fan during Panthers season. But Lauren, you talk about the personnel not being as bad as it looked. I know you and I at times were on very different sides of things with the running game because we like Chuba Hubbard and we want him to succeed, but I'm not positive he's that good. And I would be shocked if he is healthy enough if Jonathan Brooks does not immediately suck up all those carries Chuba had last year.
I mean, if Brooks is everything that people say, then first of all, I'll be happy to be wrong. Not that I don't think he's good. It's just I have other concerns about him that aren't as related to that, obviously, as you know, with the injury history and everything else. And where they got him was more my issue than anything else. But I mean, maybe I just like the way Chuba runs. Like for me, I think maybe it's a little more emotional on my end because like it was nice to see a guy like try hard, on the field every single play because you didn't always get the vibe that was happening. And by the way, like I'm not angry at anybody because of that. It's kind of human nature, right? Like why would you try hard if you played on that team after a certain amount of time, right? Like just watching how they played every week, like it was a miracle the defense played as well as it did all year, considering what they had to go watch the offense do when they would get them the football back,
Yeah.
Like, so I'm not, but Chuba just gave his all. Like he ran hard. He never stopped his legs moving. You know what I mean? And I like that in a guy. I think he can do some nice things. Do I think he's like going to be a star NFL running back? No. I don't think that. Do I think he could be a serviceable enough starter though? Yeah, I mean, I think so.
So he is in an environment where apparently drunk driving is far less tolerated than it was when he was in college.
Well, that's not good. Okay. That one's not good. But
no, Mike Gundy, the gift that keeps on giving.
So there seems to be, and Dimitri and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, there seems to be a lot of the national talking heads when it comes to the NFL that are almost kind of trying to jump on the Carolina Panthers train. So if they were to put together a good season and kind of get back in the realm of being a decent team in the NFL, they could say, hey, I told you so. Dimitri described you as a natural pessimist when it comes to the Panthers. What's your most pessimistic take on how bad this season could be for them? Did I scare her off with that question?
You may have upset Lauren terribly with
Dave,
that
we still have Lauren. Still, all right. We'll work to get her back in a second here.
It is raining here in Raleigh right now. It is possible.
What is your most pessimistic outlook on how bad this team could be?
Me? How bad it could be?
Yes.
Bad, but not bad enough to be at a place where they can draft an offensive lineman that makes a real difference. Like, to me, 7-10, 8-9 is so much worse than 0-17 for this team because they need so much help, so many difference makers.
That is that classic area, and as a Falcons fan, I've lived this myself plenty of times.
I will give you somewhere that you have really lived it is as a Hawks fan.
Oh, yeah.
Like, of course, the 1 year that the Hawks get the number 1 pick in the NBA draft, it is the year that everybody agrees this is the worst draft we've ever seen.
That we could go on a whole nother tangent with that, but I believe we have Lauren back. So I'll reframe my question in case you didn't get to hear it. We were talking a little bit earlier. There's a lot of national, talking heads around the NFL that are kind of jumping on the Panthers train a little bit. That way, if the Panthers end up being good, they can say, hey, I told you so. Dimitri said you were very naturally pessimistic when it comes to this team. What's your most pessimistic take on how bad this team could be this year?
I guess the most pessimistic take I can think of is that, you want to say it can't get worse than last year and that they somehow find a way because
that's true, Tyler. Like Lauren will physically not let me say it cannot be worse than last year. We have had an argument when recording.
Well, I thought that going into last season. I was like, well, it can't be much worse. And then it was. And then it was much, much worse.
A surprise second episode this week of This Team Is Killing Us drops tomorrow, a listener interaction episode. She is my co-host on that podcast, Lauren Brownlow. Lauren, thank you so much for taking the time.
All right. Thanks for having me.
It is really tough to follow that team. And honestly, Tyler, I don't blame people in South Carolina specifically who, 30 some odd years ago when the team came to Charlotte, the promise was that, the stadium was going to be built where Carowinds is. It will truly be a two-state team. Well, not only did you not get that, if you bought in, this is what you have had to watch for 35 years. Like, I get it. I get why you may not be all in.
And that's why your podcast is aptly named What the Carolina Panthers Do to Good People. Real quick, as we wrap up the segment, do want to hit our greatest day in the history of the world. Going to bend the rules a little bit because I did not know about this yesterday. I also would have looked it up. 1976, in an effort to drive attendance, the Braves hosted Headlock and Wedlock Night. 34 couples were married in a pregame ceremony, and the game was followed by an on-field wrestling matches in between the Braves beating the Mets 9-8 behind a 6 RBI night by Willie Martinez. So you could have gotten married before the game and sat in and watched good old wrestling back in 1976 if you attended the Braves and the Mets that day.
Well,
that is the greatest day in the history of the world.
That is what you get when your team owner also owns the WCW. Like, that's only a promotion that could have been pulled off by the Braves at that point.
Correction, Willie Montez, not Willie Martinez. Willie Martinez was the former defensive coordinator at Georgia. Willie Montez had 6 RBIs that night.
Good for him. All right. It has been a packed show of football today with me and Tyler Head. We'll come back. We'll put the wraps on it. I'm Dimitri Ravatis. This is the halftime show here on 107.5 The Game and The Game Network.
Yeah, I couldn't pass that one up.
No, that's terrific.
So what's new this year at the SEC Media Days? The first major media appearance for 2 new members of the SEC. Steve Sarkisian and the Texas Longhorns.
It's great to be joining the SEC. You know, it's the premier conference in the country for college football.
And Brent Venables with the Oklahoma Sooners. What won't be different this year, the game will be there again, live and in the flesh from the Omni Hotel in Dallas on the Game Network.
This is Jim Rome with the Sports Minute, sponsored by Relief Factor, the natural way to fight pain. There's only one single reason for me to start the day by talking about the Pirates, and that reason is their rookie ace, Paul Skeens, a no-hitter through 7 innings yesterday and 11 strikeouts and only 99 pitches. So what happened? Did he finish? They came and got him. I'm Jim Rome. As you know, summer is right around the corner, and for most people, that means more activities, more golf, more biking, more of whatever you love to do. But if you're dealing with aches and pains, your more could become less.
I don't know that I'm going to do the Carolina fans thing here. We'll more just talk.
Yeah, we can do whatever you want to do.
Just general crap.
And I've been taking it every single day.
I was going to say, I think we have the people on your side. You can make them really hate you if you want to.
It's 100% drug-free, and it's been a game changer for so many people. So let's get after it this summer. Let's feel good. Let's do more of the things that we love to do. Don't let pain keep you down. Give Relief Factor a try and save on your first order. Go to ReliefFactor.com or call 1-800-4RELIEF. That's 1-800-4-RELIEF. Help fight pain naturally with Relief Factor. These products and statements.
Let's talk about your Bulldogs and their driving problems.
Okay, sure. You can do that.
Hey guys, it's Preston Dillon for your broker.
I think people here will enjoy that.
Is a true mortgage broker offering the widest variety of government mortgage programs and the best mortgage experience for clients through its state-of-the-art technology and record low interest rates. Their goal is to make your next mortgage experience easier.
There's speed traps everywhere out there. I don't know why they think they're gonna get away with this.
Online at Buford.mortgage.
Are you talking about the players or are you talking about the police department?
Yes.
Your home's foundation, and that can affect your home's value, and nobody wants that. Say goodbye to sagging floors and hello to a stable foundation. Contact Canty today for your free inspection at 803-424-8380 or visit cantycanfixit.com.
With Progressive's Name Your Price tool, you can easily find coverage options that fit your budget. If only it were.
I don't know
How about
why or who it is I might be thinking of. But every time I see Sadiq Bey's name, I have to be reminded he plays in the NBA and is not like a soul singer.
Sadiq Bey.
Yeah.
Huh.
Options that fit your budget.
Like I said, I don't know what singer it is I'm thinking of, but every time I see his name, that is my first thought, as opposed to
Yeah.
player for, I guess, the Hawks up until this year.
I'm trying to think who you'd be thinking of.
Unless you use ZipRecruiter.
Is there somebody who Sadiq is their last name?
ZipRecruiter's advanced
I don't know.
technology identifies candidates with the right skills, sends
Sadiq.
you great matches, then you can easily invite them to apply. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. See for yourself. Go
Oh, I
to
completely misspelled that.
ZipRecruiter.com/free to get ZipRecruiter for free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
I can't think of anybody that would have that as the last name.
The halftime show sponsored by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. It's time for
Welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler and Dimitri wrapping things up here on your Friday. Again, Jay and Elijah coming up at the top of the hour for the post-game show. 2706 Divine Street at Craft and Draft, going up until 6. Come by, hang out with them, get a beer, bring your craft beer passport, have a couple craft beers as well. Good time out there at Craft and Draft on Divine Street. It is time for our Firehouse Subs text of the hour, 803-404-6100. Anytime I talk wrestling on here, we always have some of our wrestling fan listeners that love to chime in. And Nameless Texture says, we know that the TNA knockouts spawned the rise of women's wrestling. I wouldn't give them total credit for that. I do say they played a part in that, as they were doing more serious women's wrestling on the TNA side than WWE was doing for a very long time. The days of
I'm sorry, are you suggesting that Miss Kitty and the take off the evening gown in the pool match was not a serious entry into women's wrestling?
Very pivotal moment in the history of WWE for certain reasons.
Sure.
But no, it was not a 5-star classic by any means. And the days of the pillow fight matches that would last all of 2 minutes, those are days gone by.
Before we put the wraps on the show today, I did want to take a moment to shout out Lane Kiffin's dad, Monty Kiffin, who passed away yesterday at the age of 84. If you are of a certain age, you may not get just how influential this dude was in the world of defensive football. Now, most people remember him as a coordinator in the NFL. I think later on he coordinated at least Lane's first teams at Tennessee and Southern Cal, if not further on into his career as well. But Monty Kiffin developed the Tampa 2 defense, which was a revolution. And the fact that John Gruden gets to call himself a Super Bowl champion is largely because of what Monty Kiffin meant to that team and to stars like Derek Brooks and Rondé Barber and Warren Sapp. Like, this is a giant of X's and O's that the football world lost yesterday at the age of 84.
Yeah, so looking here, he was his DC at Tennessee in 09, was the assistant head coach at Southern Cal for 3 years. And I didn't even realize this. He's been a defensive assistant and player personnel analyst for the past, really going back to his time at Florida Atlantic, the past 7 years, obviously until he passed away yesterday.
Okay, so he was working for him at Ole Miss.
He was, and then he was a analyst when he was at Florida Atlantic as well.
Okay, because I saw that Monty Kiffin, when he passed away yesterday, was in Oxford, Mississippi, and I did not know if he had been moved there to be closer to the family, because I'm pretty sure his other son, Chris, is an assistant on that staff as well, or if he had been working for Ole Miss. But again, just a absolute giant of football schematics that we lost yesterday. An interesting thing happening in the SEC right now with your Georgia Bulldogs, Tyler, and that is that they cannot stay out of handcuffs. Yesterday, everybody knows about the two more dogs cited for reckless driving, but Trevor Etienne pleading guilty to DUI, or I guess pleading guilty to reckless endangerment and avoiding a DUI charge, kind of flew under the radar yesterday.
Yeah, a little bit of a mess going on there. And look, as somebody that's grown up with this. The signature of a Coach Rick team was having a couple players get in trouble in the offseason. Isaiah Crowell famously got kicked off the team after his freshman year for having a gun on campus. Like, it was just always something. And again, unfortunately, for whatever reason, this has been a persistent issue, with this team over the past handful of years. And again, as somebody that lived in Athens for multiple years and knowing the lay of the land, why anybody would think they could get away with speeding in that town, regardless of what part you're in, I don't know, because there are speed traps everywhere.
I got to be honest, when people talk about what Kirby needs to do with this team and the hard conversations he has to have with his players, this is one of those things. And understand, I have never been to Athens outside of going to a game there one time. I don't understand what the realities of the police football program, or maybe I should say police athletic department relationship, are that this keeps happening over and over again.
It depends on who you ask about it. I'll be completely honest with you. And again, I wasn't inside the football ops building or anything like that to know any of those deeper conversations. But there's about half the fan base that thinks that the local police department is out to get them and looking for opportunities to hurt the program, which why would they do that? I don't know exactly. But another half of the fan base that thinks that, these guys just need to be smarter with what they're doing. And I think the truth probably lies somewhere in between those two answers.
Yeah, I can tell you for a fact there is an SEC athletic department, and I don't want to put this on the record because it was not told to me on the record, so I will not tell you who it is. But they believe their police force to be antagonistic with their program because of the way the program is held in regard and the amount of work that police force has to do. They cannot be the police force, at least the way it was portrayed to me, was the police force cannot be bothered to protect guys doing dumb stuff. Now, the flip side of that is what we learned about when Jameis Winston got into all kinds of trouble at Florida State, and the way that the Tallahassee Police Department apparently deferred to the athletic department on whether or not they could arrest or even cite guys for speeding at times.
Yeah, that's probably a little bit too much control for an athletic department to have over the local police department. I don't think they need to go that far. I do think there can be a happy medium between the two. But this is and look, speeding is something that it's not subjective. You're either doing it or you're not. And if there's tangible proof that you did it, you get in trouble for it. So I don't know what the answer is, but I would imagine this is something that's going to rear its ugly head. Unfortunately, once again, Dimitri, I appreciate you stepping in for Terry. Coming up next week is SEC Media Days, and that's going to be all kinds of chaos for sure out there in Dallas.
I look forward to all of the pretend news coming out of SEC Media Days.
All right, Jay and Elijah out at Craft and Draft. Coming up next for the post-game show here on The Game. All right, good stuff, man.
All right, man. It was Tennessee.
I see.
All right, I'll talk to you later.
See ya.
Shop online today and see why Herndon Chevrolet makes you smile. Together, let's drive.